aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated. Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault. And you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the recovery addict, and boy do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
They got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughened him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
9 out of 10 judges prefer watching the Recovery Addicts live stream in their court.
The fireworks are not done.
Now we're getting commentary on the case.
Did the defendant find out how the FBI finds people in this case? Oh, she found out.
Okay, I'm looking frantically for a sound effect. Found it, sorry. I skipped over it. It's an important one.
Taking it easy.
It's an important one. First I want to say welcome. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. Happy, what does it say? It is Wednesday. It is Wednesday. Especially want to give a very warm welcome to Golden Girl. Repeat offender here. First in chat. First in chat comes with its own penalty. Punishment prize. I forget what that word is. Golden Girl. You know what the punishment prize is, for being first in chat. You get to own the internet until we go live again next time. So congratulations to you. You've done this before. I know you can do it again. We're all dependent on you, as is the rest of the world, just to make everything go smoothly. No sweat. I'm sure you can do that. We'd also like you to regularly participate in chat and all the regular things you normally do, in addition to any other responsibilities your regular life has for you. So thank you very much. We'll go ahead and box up the internet and email it to you. It's actually should be there now. All right. Thank you. It's all yours. We've got to do one thing very first. There are a couple things we have to do very first, but I think the first one is this one.
Mike. What day is it, Mike? Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Hump day! Welcome to Wednesday. Wow. Welcome to Wednesday. I overdid that one. I might need some water right away. It is Wednesday. And I'm dying. We're going to need some water. While we do that, I have to say, as I dive away from the microphone, you can't hear me. I have to say, I believe Sharon McDonald had a birthday.
Is that correct?
Yes. I lost the lid. Now I have to drink. You need to hear this, sorry. I have to drink out of the bottle like a heathen. Because these bottled water held a little bit more water than the cup can hold.
Because he is the guy.
All right, Sharon McDonald, I saw something earlier in chat. Let me see if I can find this again. I want to get the facts straight. Let's see. Oh, no. Sorry, it was not Sharon. Sharon, I threw you under the bus. It was right after you. Franco commented and said, "Hey, Recovery Addict, my birthday was on June 19th. Could I get a little love with the birthday song? I've been patiently waiting 5 months for my birthday song from you." Yes, we can do that. But first, we have to find out, Franco, if there's anyone else that you share a birthday with, or if today is someone else's birthday. So I guess if your birthday happened between the 19th and the 21st, which is today, I need you to own up right now. You can do it one of two ways. First of all, you can go and you can not click the like button. The rest of you have to click the like button. But for your birthday, you don't have to. But you don't click the like button. That's one way to know, Franco. And I'll just do a quick DNA swab on that. We'll analyze it against all the attendees in chat, and then we'll be able to see whose birthday it is. The other way, which would probably be quicker, is to just write in chat and let me know that it's your birthday. See, anybody else have a birthday today?
Is that correct?
Let's see. I'm scanning. Prince William's birthday is today. Is he in chat? that would be something. Birthday, anniversary, any big day happening today. Yesterday was my birthday. Army Mom, we're gonna include you as well. So Franco and Army Mom. I need a pen. Good thing Matthew Harris sent me one, and now my kids have stolen it already. It's probably in my new car, waiting to be used to fill out an accident report. Okay, let's see. Prince William is 41 today.
Alex stole it as well.
Not seeing anyone else. Paula Abdul's birthday today. Franco, nice that you share with Paula Abdul. I'm trying to think of a song she sang, and I know many of them, but they're just not coming to mind. Not seeing any others. Okay, so we're just gonna fire it off like that. Do you want me to sing too?
Kick back, taking it easy.
Okay, here we go. I don't have much because I did the hump day yell already. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Franco and Army Mom belated. Happy birthday to you. There you go. I even did the drop note for you. I was feeling that low note this morning. Hey, Uncivil Law, welcome. Sorry you walked in on this mess. This is what we do every morning, a little bit. So hopefully, Uncivil Law, it's not your birthday as well, because I would have liked to include you in the song. But all right, Kurt is in the house. Welcome. We are getting ready to pick up where we left off on the Parkland case with the state is supposed to arrest today. I believe they're going to arrest first thing. I'm not sure why they didn't arrest yesterday. I think they wanted the overnight just to go over, check their list, make sure they had gotten everything they wanted in from the witnesses. They probably have a few more witnesses on the list that they possibly could call, and they're like, we've got everything we need. That's good. It is not your birthday. Awesome. Well, happy birthday whenever it is, Kurt. Is that correct? Franco, your birthday is now complete. I apologize missing it on the 19th. Let's see, what was the 19th? Well, that was Monday, right? Monday we were not live because it was a holiday. Okay. Anyway, so first thing, I think we're going to get the state is going to arrest unless they're probably going over their evidence list as well, making sure that all the items of evidence that were presented were formally entered and received by the court, and all the formalities that they want to have done before their case is over. And once they rest their case in chief, then it switches over to defense. And I think it's going to be fiery, first of all. Mark Eiglash, Alex stole it. His name needs to be changed to just English or eyeglass or something. I cannot say Eiglash, and I'm not the only one, so it's not my problem. But Mark has had a hard time asking questions in a format that the judge approves. Other cases we've seen where we have attorneys that are able to just tack on at the end of it, and that correct makes it a question, and so you can state something and say, is that correct? This judge has none of that. He's like, ask your question with a question mark on the end. Don't just try to convert your statement to a question at the end by saying, is that correct or right, or is that right, anything like that. He's had trouble with that. We've had an objection counter running. Okay. I'll tell you, the objection counter right now is up to, 98. 98 objections. These are sustained objections by the prosecution. And so we're pretty sure we're going to break the 100. How has a recovery addict not been a DJ all his life? What a voice. Well, you're too kind. You're too kind. I'll tell you, it was a rough. Is there a video of Scot Peterson hiding behind a car or something for 40 minutes? Because there better be. Uncivil Law, I have not seen it yet, but I took the week off last week. If you guys saw it last week, let me know. I know that we've heard testimony that he pretty much stayed in that general area by the buildings between the 1200 and the 700 building, working the radios, gun out for most of the time, I think. But aside from that, I have not seen him run and hide, which is, ironically what some of the other people were supposed to do and didn't. So I guess a lot of people didn't do what they were supposed to do. But yeah, I don't see it. In this case, I'm having a hard time seeing where the jury could convict. And where you could say that he did anything other than what was right. We've got a couple people who claim to be the hero, even though they turned tail and ran. And I'm not saying that they should have done something different. I'm just saying that it seems that they're presenting their actions in a way that was like stellar and exemplary. I was thinking of the gentleman on the golf cart yesterday, where he drove up, and in the brief second he was off camera, that's where he claims that he got on the school radio and called code red, and then stuck it in reverse and backed up like a quarter mile as fast as the golf cart would go in reverse, getting out of there. So apparently, between him panicking and throwing it in reverse, not even time to turn the golf cart around, he had the presence of mind to call out a code red on the radio, and that was definitely him doing it, and not Scot Peterson, who was working the radios both time, and nobody knows what he was talking about, supposedly. It feels like a scapegoat to me. The more we get into this case, the further this goes, especially now that we know we're at the end of the state's case. I'm just not seeing the evidence to convict him here. There's a difference between hiding and taking cover. Now, I'm kitty bang bang. I'm not saying that he couldn't have done something differently and been effective. It very well is possible. He could have taken action, done something different than he did, and prevented at least some of the deaths that occurred after he arrived. Okay, but I don't see where his criminal action where the negligence occurred, especially based on everybody who's testified about him, about what he said, where he said, what's going on? Where's the shooter? He's got this information from coming over the radio, coming over from everything. It might be the football field. It might be here it's by these buildings, 1200, 1300. And he doesn't know. He asked people, do they know where the shooter is? Okay. It seems to me that even though other people knew where the shooter was, he didn't, and no one told him. I think that's key. I think you can't just say, well, he should have known. Okay, he should have maybe, but realize we've got the echo problem. He's standing right there in the middle of that echo chamber, which is what those buildings were. Is you've got a covered courtyard he's standing by. You've got a 700 building on one side. You've got a 1200 on another. Nice straight cement walls all the way around, and many people have testified, in there it echoes. You can't tell what sounds are coming from. You can't really pinpoint it. Even the gentleman who said he could tell that the gunshots were coming from inside the building was only when he was right up next to it. So I don't think the jury's there. Honestly, we would have no indication right now. We don't have anybody in court that's giving us feedback on jury body language or anything else. I don't know where the jury stands or even who's on the jury or the makeup, anything that way. But I just don't see how the jury could be on board saying, this is the guy. He's the one to blame. Let's give him the same sentence that we gave the shooter. I just can't see them doing that right now. Okay, rant over. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, guys. I don't know why. I know why I had that in me. I can tell you. Yesterday, I got on the phone and complained to a service provider for something that they were doing wrong.
Is that correct?
My phone company gave away my phone number without my permission, and it suddenly became someone else's phone number. And the rant's not over. I'm still ranting a little bit as we wait for court to start. So it became somebody else's phone number, and that was not cool because I used that phone number for a lot of business contacts. I used that phone number for all of our family, everything. It's on paperwork we filed, all sorts of things. There's everything from building permits to you name it. I need this phone number.
Not relevant.
And they, without contacting me at all, they got a request from somebody saying, hey, I'd like to transfer my phone number over to another service, and here's what it is. And they used my phone number, and they took it and just gave it to them. I had to jump through hoops. I practically had to get a notary public signing me authenticating that it was my number to bring it to them in the first place. And then they just gave it away. And it took about 2 weeks to have them, bring it back. They call it slamming. You get your number slammed when somebody takes it from you without your permission. But they're the ones who have to give it up. You can't just, I'd love to just, I wanted to actually tell the guy, and this is Vonage, by the way, for those that really want to know what company, I'll out them. I'd love to just tell them, I'd love to take your phone number, your 1-800 number. I'd like to transfer it to have that be my number now. Can I just go ahead and sign the paperwork and you release that? It doesn't happen like that, but they did with mine. And anyways, this nice old lady, I don't know how she got it or why it was probably a mistake on her end. But this nice old lady now gets our phone calls, and we call out, and it still looks like we're calling from our number because Vonage sort of they spoof the phone number. It's how the IP thing works. But So this nice old lady would get our phone calls, and we told her this, stop answering our phone, and she wouldn't because it was her phone as well. Anyway, long mess. We ended up getting a temporary number. We ended up getting our new number supposedly was going to be back after 2 weeks, and I had to do the same verification and third-party verification. They wanted everything, social security number down to get my number back. And finally, I just had it out with Vonage last night, and I maybe made the sales technician or the support technician cry just a little bit in his cereal or whatever he was eating, but he was eating something on the phone. Anyway, it was that. That's why I have a rant this morning. I woke up on the wrong side of bed. After all that, when I called Vonage and actually ranted on him and said, "You guys need to fix this," they had already fixed it, and he proved me wrong. And so I said, "Thank you. No, don't do it again." And we hung up, and we're good friends now. So that's where it was. So we are getting set. We're less than 15 minutes from court. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry for that completely unrelated information. That was not relevant, but a funny story. Okay, 2 days in a row. Yes. Well, the thing that caused the Vonage call yesterday.
We're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Was they sent us an email saying that it was fixed before it was fixed. So we tested it, and it wasn't working. Like I called my own number from my cell phone, and it rang the other lady. And I already had an email from them saying it was fixed. Well, by the time I called them and got them on the phone and said, "Hey, you need to fix it," they had fixed it. So I think they just sent the email out early. And then for some reason, they sent out another request saying, "Hey, we canceled your request for your transfer of phone number," even though it had been completed. And it was just a nightmare. Let's see. I was in your dream, and I was being very rude, said Adam. You don't happen to work for Vonage on the side, Adam, do you? Because if so, and you call yourself Henry, that would have been you. Anyone have a link to court feed this morning? Having trouble finding it. Yes. Here's where I'm looking. Oh, 1 second, Kurt. I'm on. Oh, let's go here. 3. Look for WSVN TV. WSVN TV is out of Miami. 7 News. They've got a feed coming up. It's starting at 9:30. I think 9:15 is the call time for the jurors. 9:30 is when they're going to actually begin. Let's see. Cachette gifted 5 Recovery Addict memberships. Thank you very much, Cachette. What's the next trial we plan to cover? Tazel, we've got a couple coming up. First of all, we're almost 1 month out. Right now, we're 1 month out from Sarah Boone, which starts on July 24th. There are a couple smaller ones in the meantime. I know there's some big cases in the headlines. A lot of those cases that are in the headlines won't actually come to trial for months to years from now. I mean, we're thinking like Corey Richins in Utah with the lady, the grief author who killed her husband allegedly, things like that. So we're keeping an eye on those. We'll watch a couple other ones as well. I'm glad the Scot Peterson trial is not taking the allotted time where they said it would be almost 2 months. Okay, it was slated into August to take for this trial. I don't think they're going to do that. We are going to have a lot of witnesses for defense. They said they're going to call, 22 people who said they couldn't tell where the gunshots were coming from or something like that. So, awesome, Kurt. Glad that works. L&C might have a feed later. They're usually a little late with theirs. Watching a video of a guy talking about air traffic control, which I watched yesterday. Cool, Richard. That's awesome. I think I might have missed the rest of that comment, so I don't know what the relevance there was. But seeming as I talk about things that are irrelevant, I should let you do the same.
Is that correct?
Air traffic control. Oh, I might have to do with. I watched the Sully video, the crash on the Hudson.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
I should be financially compensated for their error. VC, that's the other call I made yesterday. If you want to hear, I can tell you that I canceled my Optimum. That was my cable internet, and it is, let me just say, in my experience, the worst internet service I've ever had. And that's saying a lot because I had CenturyLink, for those of you who know what that is. It was awful. And 5 months after I paid for the 1 gig package for Optimum and signed up and paid the extra money to get the higher speed, it still had not been fixed. I still had a slower connection than I had at the lower connection speed. I had less reliable service, and I had spent a fortune, hundreds of dollars to fix it on my own. Had our lines replaced, had the main line replaced, had our modems replaced. It was awful. So yesterday I actually canceled. And as soon as I said the word cancel, man, they got on the phone. They're like, hell, we've got this other team that can help you. Yeah, we know what the problem is. We can fix that. No problem. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and switch you to a seasonal account. We're not going to charge you until the speed's back up to normal. And then we're going to go ahead and keep you at that existing rate. I'm like, no, I said cancel. And they're like, okay, so we're going to just put you in seasonal right now. We're going to do this. And they would not. It took so many tries. And I said, at the end, I said, look, your technicians are allowed on my property one more time, and that is to remove the cable from the side of my house. And if they come on again, I'm going to have them criminally trespassed. I told him that. I'm like, I want nothing to do with you. Remove me from your advertising list. I don't want to get your mailers anymore. Okay? Take me out of your directory. Take me out of your sales list, potential customer list. It took a lot of work to get rid of them, but I finally did. Keep Guessing says, yay, 2 months. Thank you very much. No, Scott, the worst has to be Spectrum. Spectrum changed to Optimum. Optimum bought Spectrum, which was funny because the two were like neck and neck. They were fighting for lowest quality service in the internet provider business, and then they merged. So now that they're the same. So they were the same company. Spectrum's pretty bad. Or no. Sorry. Suddenlink. Not Spectrum. Suddenlink and Optimum merged. No more coffee for Recovery Addict. This is just me waking up. I have not even had breakfast yet today. Not even breakfast. Anyway, we're getting close to court being ready. Tracy, great to be able to catch up with you live. I'm sorry that it was today. You've had 2 rants for me today. I promise I'm not in a bad mood. Oh my goodness. Mediacom here, it's the worst. AT&T. Sounds like you need to get a few Google numbers and start calling Recovery Addict and sell him some things. Oh my goodness. Thanks, Thomas. Go ahead and do that. So what are you using now for your internet service? Rosie, two things. I have LiveView bonded cellular, which at any time if my internet service goes down, I can plug my HDMI feed from my switcher here and connect 4 modems that are agnostic. So it will go to AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular. It doesn't matter. They can switch between any carrier. My contract has them switch, and actively they'll jump between multiple ones during each session. And it will combine the best available signal from the 4 strongest cell signals out there as far as data throughput, bond them together into one package, and send it out to the internet direct to my YouTube with one button. So this is my backup, which is nice to have. And then in addition to that, I have 2 gigabit fiber straight to my house. It's right there. You can't see it. It's off the screen, but it's on the wall. I could turn it. You can see the lights. My pole's in the way. Hang on. There you go. That's my fiber to the house box right there. So that's what I'm using for internet. And I will say the fiber has been fantastic. It's unfortunately 2 gigabit speed is more than the Eros Wi-Fi network can handle. It can only handle 1 gigabit. So I'm going to take a splitter and split, basically route a gigabit of bandwidth to the Airbnb and a gigabit to here, and we should be fine that way. Okay, that is it. That is intense. Yes, I'm serious about my internet. I told the guy at Suddenlink, because he's like, we can lower your bill, Optimum. We can lower your bill. We give you a $20 credit. I said, it's not about the money. I said, honestly, last month I paid $3,600 for my internet connection, which I did. That's how much the LiveView costs. I said, I just need the internet to work. Okay, I'm not calling you to get a $5 credit on my bill. But anyway, I could not pay $3,600 for the internet every month, and luckily that fee actually gets spread out over many months. Have you missed the water filling? You did. You missed it. I needed it right after the hump day yell. Let's see. You had no issues with internet service. I got billed last month for 2 separate fiber lines on 2 different addresses. How's that? It took me 5 days to sort out. You've got twice the internet you need. You're paying for your neighbors as well. What a good guy, Jackafori, paying for your neighbor's internet. Selena K, Yahoo, 2 months. Good to have that green courthouse by your name. Thank you, Selena. Appreciate your support. Okay. It's a lot of dinero. It really is. This is something that I've been saving and working towards, that LiveView. for many, many years. And finally the price was right. And it's what I can use. It's how I'm on 2 times speed. I will slow it down. I don't know why I'm speaking so fast. Ranting is good. Get it all out. Hydrate. Okay, I think here before court starts, we're going to need to do a little bit of meditation. Maybe was this the meditation music? No, that's not it. Definitely not that one. Hang on one second. I think there's a better one. Okay, got to find my music. Not there, not there. I've got like 10 pages of music I'm scrolling through. Sound bites. Okay, is it this one? Nope. I'll have to use the sad music. Okay, let's get in our pose of comfort, whether it's like the Om or what else is it? I don't know. For me, it's like downward dog. Just claps on the floor like a kid. This is my relaxation pose. It may look like I'm sleeping, guys, but I'm just resting. Give me a minute. We'll be right there. We've got the audio turned on right now for the trial. When it begins, we'll hear it. But just for a moment, we're gonna close our eyes a little. This is nice.
I was kicked back, taking it easy.
Oh, yeah. That does feel better, doesn't it? Maybe I need a Snickers. Maybe I'm hangry.
Squirrel.
Ranting feels good. I'm watching a grown man nap on YouTube, says Greeners. It's just temporary. It's just that. I'm listening while driving. I don't think I should close my eyes, says Denny. Denny, you get a pass on this one. Please keep your eyes open for the rest of us. You're our designated driver this morning. My neighbor hit a pole in his yard. Oh, hang on. How did that go? Go back. My neighbor hit a pole in his yard with a lawnmower, knocked it down, took out electricity, internet, and landline phones in the whole area, and he kept mowing. Oh, man. He hit it with a lawnmower.
Talking about stuff that is not
What
relevant.
size of lawnmower does your neighbor have? I need one like that. My lawnmower, when it sees like tall weeds, it starts sputtering and be like, please don't make me cut those. I think of the snot bubbles, says Debbie. It was just time to relax a little bit. I don't know, natural caffeine or something. I was ramped up this morning. Jensen was a good man. He worked hard. He loved his family. Then his wife died. Snot was bubbling up.
Your son just smeared feces all over my bathroom.
Yeah, that's this. We've got some great sound effects from the Jensen trial. That was a good one. Welcome, Ricky. Okay. Ooh, trying to yo-yo Ma's back. Just woke up, go back to sleep. Okay, here we are. You guys, it is 9:31. And with this, okay, I'm now relaxed. It does happen to be about 85 degrees in my studio, so I'm going to turn the air on a little bit so that I don't die a premature death. Well, it says 75, but it feels like 85. There we go. Air is on, so we can survive another day. All right, Cachette, welcome back. Yeah, it's been a rough morning. Told a couple stories, had a little bit of a TED Talk rant, and now we're ready for trial. So give me just a minute. We're going to have that pulled up. Actually, there's no court feed yet. The judge said 9:30 for a start time, but he said that before, and it doesn't always happen. Find a backup. There it is. Okay, we have one feed. Okay, let's go to channel 2. There's our view of the courtroom. Clearly the jury's not there because we're filming the jury box. This is how we roll, guys. The cameraman's just getting started. Looks like he's trying to adjust his level a little bit. doesn't the courtroom looks a little bit slanted. Maybe the tripod's not quite leveled out. These commercial tripods, the fun thing about them, for those who've never worked with one like this, you can pretty much throw the tripod up, and as long as it's stable,
Mr. Igarch is present for Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of
it has like a ball where you can steady the whole camera and level it out.
State anything you need me to address before we resume your presentation.
No.
Defense, anything you need me to address before we resume your presentation. State, are you introducing any evidence to this last witness?
Yes, I am, Judge. It's been pre-marked as 3A, and it'll be coming in, if the court permits it, as 52.
One more
Is that
witness.
something that can be shown on the TV screens?
Yes, it's a transcript.
Oh, it's a transcript.
However, for the remaining visual evidence, we will ask that the cameras remain off.
All right, so
but it's already in evidence.
everything is off. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, please bring the jury back.
Turning on the TVs. It was not a taser the guy was holding. That was a remote control for the TVs. They have to manually turn the TVs on and off. We need stereo audio. It's so frustrating. Every morning it seems like they've reinvented the audio connections for this courtroom. It's awful. Turn it down here. This is all right, Bagel. Thank you, Siegel Moore. I think we are going to get more spice. We're going to get evidence that's brought in that counters what the state has presented, and they're going to have to object to something, even if it's just to break up the flow of evidence as it's being admitted. So we're going to see some spicy objections from the prosecution. I think we're going to see a lot, I'm just calling it here, a lot of objections about leading the witness. Because, I'm sorry, Mark, you're a great lawyer, but you lead the witness. And he has a hard time asking questions in the question format. So we're going to hear a lot of that. The judge may even, save your bingo card. The judge may even reprimand him again for doing that. We're definitely going to break the 9. There, thank you. Oh no, I turned it back on. They need experts to say Peterson did the right thing. I don't know if they're going to get an expert to do that. I don't know. Maybe they will. Do like his cadence, rapid fire questions. He's good. He doesn't do as well on repeating the question. I wish he was better at that. I wish when the judge sustains or overrules an objection from the state, I wish he was able to verbatim ask the exact same question again, because I think sometimes he loses the point and actually glosses over what he was getting at. So he sort of moves on to the next question, even though the objection was not sustained. Wish he was just a tiny bit better at that, but so far, no complaints. Sound is awful. We'll get it fixed. Give us a minute to get a couple feeds running here.
Jurors entering.
This is the worst audio in the history of ever.
Be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get the notepads back out.
Okay, we're going to give me a minute to get this fixed. We'll do what we normally do and get good audio for you.
I hope you had a nice evening last night. When we press pause on the trial history in the middle of the state's presentation, we're going to resume it at that point. State, when you are ready, you may call your next witness.
The state calls Detective John Curcio.
Detective John. Oops. Crank the audio here a little bit. I don't know why we didn't adjust the camera before the live stream had started, and now we're doing it now, but that's not rule of thirds. That's not how it works right here. Usually you show a little bit more of their head in the picture. Judge Martin Fine, that's what it cuts off. Presiding. They've turned the audio off for just a minute. I think the cameraman's fiddling with his camera right now. There we go. He was looking at something that was not the image through the viewfinder. Leading the witness is sometimes an intentional way to get the witness to testify a certain way or to get the jury facts that you can't any other way. You can't unring a bell. Yeah, but Goodman Law, Mark has gone so far that he's been reprimanded over and over and over about it. It's more, I think, his style. Well, they like completely muted us. So I've got a lot of work. I'm getting like 5 decibels out of this. Just 1 second here. Can boost it a little bit, but now they're going to blast it back up again, kill us.
Once you are seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair up as far forward as it will go. If you can please state your full name and spell your full name.
John William Joseph Kersey.
J-O-H-N.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gomes, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Detective Curcio.
How are you?
Please introduce yourself to the jury and tell them where you work.
My name is John Curcio. I work currently for the Broward Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked for the Broward Sheriff's Office?
2009, I started with the Sheriff's Office.
Give the jury a little background on what you did before 2009.
1980, I joined the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. I retired from them in 2009. I did 13 years as a homicide detective for the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. 10 days after I retired, I joined the Sheriff's Office, where I've been a homicide detective with them, other than the original, I think, 10 or 11 months they wanted to see me in uniform, so I did uniform, and then I went back to working homicides for the Sheriff's Office.
When you say they wanted to see you in uniform, do you mean that after retiring as a homicide detective, you went back to the road?
Yes. For the Sheriff's Office, I worked for the City of Lauderdale Lakes as a uniformed officer. It was just part of VSO's standard protocol that when you were a new employee, you had to do some time in uniform.
Once you completed your time on the road, did you go straight into, I don't know if you refer to it as a detective bureau?
Yes, I went straight to becoming a homicide detective for the Sheriff's Office.
Now, over your time as a detective handling homicides, if you know approximately how many homicides have you handled?
Well, I mean, I've handled hundreds of homicides, but we do other things than homicides. We do any form of unattended deaths, which could be an accidental death, a suicide. I've done thousands of those types of investigations, but several hundred homicides.
Explain generally for the jury how a detective is assigned to a particular case.
Well, normally at the Sheriff's Office, we're a team. We have a 2-man team, and we're on call for periods of 2 weeks at a time. Unless you get involved in a homicide investigation, then you're taken off call for that. During that 2-week period of time, you handle all the rest of the death investigations that I described in that 2-week period of time.
Back in 2018, you were a homicide detective, correct?
Yes.
Explain for the jury what your connection is to the MSD case as it relates to your role as a homicide detective.
I was the lead detective assigned that investigation.
As the lead detective, who were you investigating?
Well, we charged Nicholas Cruz with that particular incident.
Did you respond to the school on February 14th?
Yes, I did.
Explain for the jury what you were doing that day when you first received the call.
Myself and about 5 or 6 homicide detectives were in our homicide squad room, which is at 2601 West Broward. One of our lieutenant colonels kind of came running into the squad room and said there was a shooting up at the school, and we all the homicide detectives that were in the squad room ran down to our cars, jumped in our cars, put on our lights and sirens, and responded up the turnpike to Stoneman Douglas.
Do you recall approximately what time you arrived on campus?
Not without looking at the actual timeline. I know we got to the scene right around the same time that the Broward Sheriff's Office SWAT team was starting to make entry into the west side of the 1200 building. So I'd have to look at the timeline. We got up there relatively quickly because we were able to park right alongside of the 1200 building on the east roadway. And after a few minutes, there were so many cars up there you couldn't park within miles of the school.
And the reason I ask, when you're responding to the scene, what's your understanding as to whether it's an active scene or?
Well, again, all we knew was that when the lieutenant colonel kind of told us what was going on, that there was a shooting, somebody had been shot, and we didn't know much more of that. When we were, I was in my car separately as we're going up the turnpike, as fast as we could. So there wasn't a lot of information that we knew other than what the lieutenant colonel had told us.
When you arrived on campus, what is the approach you took as far as responding to the scene? Was there a specific approach because of the term active shooter?
Well, again, when we got to the scene, we were able to park the group of homicide detectives I'm describing on the east side, and there were hundreds of students self-evacuating the school when we got there. They were coming off every exit point they could. And as we were coming out of our cars, we were trying to gather intelligence or information as to what was going on campus from them as they were running by us. We were making them drop their backpacks, and we were trying to get some intelligence information as to what actually was going on.
Explain for us why in that moment when you're arriving to the scene of the shooting, you would stop and talk to the children.
Well, again, I didn't have any idea really what was going on at the school at that point, so you're trying to gain information so you know what to do as a police officer.
Is there any active shooting going on while you're doing this?
No, there was no gunshots going off, just all the kids self-evacuating.
Did the lack of gunshots impact your response at all?
Well, when you respond on any scene, whether it's an active shooter or anything in police work, you're trying to gather intelligence as to what you're dealing with. So when you're not hearing the shots, you're still trying to gather intelligence from the students. Where is something happening? What did you see? What did you hear? To react to what you're going to do.
And if you were hearing shots, what does your training dictate that would change?
You're supposed to go towards the shots to find out, investigate what's going on.
Is that true for a domestic or any scene?
Yes.
When you stopped those children and spoke to them, were you able to gather any information?
No, none of the kids had any information. We we asked them to go, there was a berm on the road further east, to all sit down over there. And while we were talking to the groups that were just filing out of the school, other detectives were kind of like still questioning the groups that were sitting on the berm, and no one had any information as to what was going on the campus.
While this is happening, you explained that SWAT had already arrived, correct?
Yes.
And so was there a significant officer presence already working the 1200 building?
Well, I could only see SWAT on the west side. When we first got there, I didn't know who was in the 1200 building at that point. I just knew they were on the west side doors starting to make entry. So yeah, there was police presence, but we can only see what was on the east side along the 1200 building down to the bus loop. I couldn't tell what was on the west side because the buildings blocked our view.
What happens next?
At one point, while we're on that site, again, still trying to interview all these students coming off, there was a radio communication that I heard from another detective's radio from somebody in the video room saying that the shooter was coming down from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor of the 1200 building. And then there was a pause, and then eventually we realized that somebody was looking at the video from 20 minutes earlier and describing what they had seen in the building 20 minutes earlier. So it was not real-time information.
What happens when you realize that information is lagged?
Again, we're still doing the same thing, trying to gather intelligence from the kids coming off campus. Shortly thereafter, somebody came up with the name of the suspect and put it over the radio. So now we're actually re-engaging with the students who came off the campus who are sitting on the berm or coming off. Anybody know what Nicholas Cruz looks like? Because we had no idea. He could have been in the group we had separated on the berm.
So at some point it does become known to the officers on scene that the shooter has left the building.
They knew that the video feed was 20 minutes earlier. He had left the 1200 building, but they didn't know he had left the campus, I don't think. But they knew he left the 1200 building because you could see that.
When you realize that the shooter has left the building, as a detective that's going to be handling homicide, this specific homicide, what is your role in that moment?
Well, again, my moment, we're still doing all the things we've been doing since the moment we stepped up there. But now I'm talking to students. I'm on my phone trying to get on social media, trying to come up with a picture of Nicholas Cruz. I'm trying to get any of the students who know him to provide me a picture so we know what this guy looks like. And then one of the assistant principals, who's kind of in this, this mass of students, hears the name and says, I know what Nicholas Cruz looks like because I had done a threat assessment with him at the school. And that was Denise Reed.
Was Denise Reed able to provide you with a photograph?
She was trying to get it through ROTC, I believe, again, through the school radio communication system. And then we heard over the radio that he had been stopped. So Denise Reed got in a car with homicide detective Zach Scott, and myself and Zach Scott in separate vehicles started heading down to the location where Nicholas Cruz had been detained.
How far from the school was Nicholas Cruz detained?
Several miles. He was down in Coral Springs in a residential area.
Was the route that he took when he left the campus learned?
Eventually, as the investigation proceeded, he went westbound through the school grounds. He blended in with the other students, self-evacuating, ended up in the Walmart, which is just west of the school. Then he traveled down to a McDonald's, which is just southwest of the school, and then eventually into the residential area where he was detained.
Was it learned which side of the 1200 building he exited?
Yeah, he exited the west side, with the west doors.
Once the shooter was detained, did you respond to the area that he was being held?
I attempted to, but again, by the time all this is occurring, the traffic was incredible because you had every law enforcement, paramedic, fire department, family members all heading to the school, plus you had normal rush hour traffic. I never got down there before they ended up transferring him up to Broward Medical North to be medically cleared. So I kind of diverted halfway down to where he was detained to get to the hospital, which was where he was being brought to.
All right. I know this investigation was very vast, so I'm going to streamline it a bit, but did you ultimately interview the shooter?
Yes, I did.
Explain for the members of the jury, just generally, approximately how long you spoke with the shooter, not what the contents of that conversation.
I spoke to him for several hours, but I was with him probably for, and again, I'd have to look at my notes, anywhere between 10 and 12 hours before I ended up actually formally booking him on a probable cause charge.
As the lead detective on this case, explain what your role would be as far as walking the crime scene. Is that something you ever did in this case?
Yes. After we formally booked him and he was brought to the jail, I ended up going up to the crime scene where the other homicide detectives had remained from the time that myself and Zach Scott left to go where he had been originally stopped.
Did you familiarize yourself with the campus and with the 1200 building?
Yes.
Approximately how many hours or days initially in this investigation did you spend on that campus, having walked the campus?
Well, I mean, we did the walkthrough over the course of the years that this investigation took against Nicholas Cruz several times. More so was the video that we watched and ended up reviewing more times than we did walkthroughs, at least myself.
Are you familiar then with the surveillance system at the school?
Yes.
You're familiar with where certain cameras are placed and located?
Yes.
And you familiarized yourself with the location of the particular in the 1200 building as to where the camera angle is looking at?
Yes.
Now,
this is a SRO, or this is a sheriff's officer.
Did you learn
detective, so I think
the
this will be
names of the
relevant.
victims that were located on each individual floor?
Yes, I did.
Explain for the members of the jury how that happened in those first hours or days.
All right, when I was actually at the public safety building with the suspect, again, a team of homicide detectives remained on the scene. And they were the ones who physically were able to identify each of the victims, which took a period of time because, again, some of the students didn't have identification on them, and it took several hours for us to get their true names.
And I don't mean to be crass when I say this, but by the time you walked the first floor and the third floor, had the deceased been removed?
Yes, all the victims had been removed by the time I got up there.
Was it part of your job as understanding the crime scene to know, nevertheless, where each victim had died?
Yeah, I walked through with the detectives who were on the scene. The video itself actually showed a clearer portrayal of where they were when they passed, because once the entry teams began to come in to try to rescue the kids in the classrooms, the living kids, some of the victims' deceased bodies had to be moved away from doorways so that entry could be made. So not only did I speak to the detectives who were on the scene who found, saw and found where the victims had been moved to, we watched the video where you could tell where they actually fell before they were moved.
And after watching that video, you yourself walked and were able to physically stand in the location where those individuals had been shot or killed, correct?
Yes, several times.
I'd like to focus on the first floor. If you could describe to the members of the jury just briefly the names of the individuals that were killed on the first floor.
All right, the deceased on the first floor.
I'm going to object this to relevance since my client was on the scene.
This should be sustained.
The relevance is?
Well, Judge, the relevance is just the order of operations, the timeline that took place. Where his client was at what time is pretty relevant.
Okay. Over the defense objection. Go ahead, sir. That's overruled. You can answer the question.
All right, the first floor, coming in through the east side of the 1200 building, first floor, you had Gina Maltalto, Martin Duque, Luke Hoyer. A little further into the first floor was Alex Schachter, Alyssa Alt-Tadef, Helena Ramsey, Nicholas Dorette, Carmen Shentra, Christopher Hickson, which was a staff member, and Aaron Feiss, who was a staff member.
And did you, if I didn't hear you say Elena Petty?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Elena Petty.
Now,
I apologize for that.
What's he reading?
And as far as processing the crime scene, was there a crime scene tech that was assigned to collect the shell casings and ensure that the scene was properly processed?
Yeah, there was numerous crime scene people at the school. Each one, as if I recall correctly, there was teams on each floor assigned to each floor.
And as the lead detective, are you involved in making sure that that happens in the investigation?
Yeah, I mean they're all they all have their own supervisors, but ultimately the homicide lead detective is responsible to make sure everything's done properly.
Were you responsible for also, and we won't go through each individual's name, but were you responsible for also learning the names of those who were wounded but not deceased?
Yes.
And were there several on the first floor?
There was numerous on the first floor, yes.
As part of your investigation, did you learn whether any rounds had been shot on the second floor?
Yes, when we were able to not only do the physical examination of the second floor, but watching the video as well. On the second floor, there were several classrooms that were shot into.
And let me back up. Who was the last person to be shot on the first floor?
Coach Aaron Feiss.
And Coach Aaron Feiss, what time was Coach Aaron Feiss shot?
2:23:25.
All of those shootings happened before the defendant was even on the scene.
2:23:25. How many times was Aaron Feiss shot?
Twice in the chest.
Ms. Gomes, is this an item that's already in evidence?
It is. I apologize, Judge. We're now showing the screen bear remain off, so I'm going to turn my screen as well. What's in evidence as States 5. This is the full 6 hours of surveillance.
Court Deputy Unit, all the TVs are off.
TVs are off. That zoom out just about caught the jury. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if it did. I'm just checking a later replay. Yep, full on show the jury. Nice. Not the first time. I don't know why we have audio off as well. It must be a sidebar or something here. Abby, there are reasons why they can bring this in from admissibility standpoints because the nature of the charges.
If you look at that image off to the left where the rifle is being pointed at, which enters into the staircase, and then that door in front of you where you see Nicholas Cruz coming out with the gun leads into the main hallway of the first floor. And it's a mirror image on the east side as well.
So if you're standing on the west side of the building, is there a set of doors that will lead you into the hallway and a set of doors that will lead you into the stairwell?
Yes.
And did you yourself enter this location that we see on this image? You're familiar with this stairwell?
Yes.
Where was, in reference to the image we're looking at, Aaron Feist's body found?
The doors where the rifle is being pointed and you see that bright light, he was found right on the concrete patio area where those doors would have opened up into, as if he was coming into those doors when he was shot.
Were crime scene investigators or yourself able to discover whether at the time that he was shot the doors were open or closed?
Well, the doors were open because he got shot from Nicholas Cruz was inside the building. He was just making, it appeared consistent with him just making entry into the building. He was killed.
And at 2:23:26, was this the last killing that takes place on the first floor?
Yes.
So all of the other deaths that take place happen after 2:23:26.
That is correct.
And how many shell casings, if you know, were discovered, and I apologize if you already said this, on this second floor?
I believe on the second floor there was 6.
Were any students shot on the second floor?
No.
Turning your attention to the third floor.
Yes.
I think the cameraman doesn't know he can show this. There's no screen that's showing this. He's allowed to show. That's why the screens are turned off.
Judge, can we turn the screens off for a moment while he sets up for the next video?
Kathy, thank you very much. Good to have a green courthouse by your name. Thank you so much for your support.
You ready? Okay. Now, it may seem like a silly question, but did the shooter go from the first floor to the second floor to the third floor?
Yes,
in
he
order?
did. Yes, he did.
And when the shooter enters the third floor at 2:24:30.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
At 2:24:30, when the shooter is on the third floor, explain for us the names of the victims that were shot and were deceased on the third floor.
From the east side of the third floor going to the west, teacher Scott Beagle was killed. Carol Longren, Meadow Pollock, Joaquim Oliver, Jamie Guttenberg, and Peter Wang.
In addition to those that were killed, were there other victims that were wounded?
Yes, there was.
And what are their names?
We had a teacher by the name of Stacy Lapel, was on the third floor, Kyle Lyman, Marion Kabachenko, and Anthony Borges.
While the shooter is working his way, killing people on the third floor, yes, approximately how many rounds were recovered from the third floor?
I believe there was over 61 rounds on the third floor.
And those 61 rounds, they were all fired while he spent his 3 minutes or so, or however long, on the third floor?
Yes.
Before exiting the building?
Yes.
This is a reporter.
Do you recall what time the shooter ended up blending in with the rest of the students?
I'm going to refresh my memory and see if I may not have it here without my full report unless you have something you can
This
show
camera
me.
would keep showing the jury.
Does 2:29 sound correct? We can pull up the video if you need.
No, that sounds correct.
Okay. So,
I'm going to object. 249?
we'll just pull up the video.
Yeah, the objection is sustained. Go ahead, Ms. Gomes. Ask your next question.
If we can turn the screens on. Detective Peterson, ask you to take a moment.
Actually, it's 2:27:55.
Is when the shooter leaves the building or places his gun down?
Oh, yeah, places his gun on the staircase.
Okay.
And then,
And after placing his gun on the staircase, he then goes down the 3 flights of stairs.
yeah, I
correct?
found it in my notes. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right. And so do you, if you don't know, that's fine, the time that he actually blends in with the students?
He runs for a period of time before he catches up to the hundreds who are fleeing westbound.
Okay.
So, I mean, he takes a few seconds to get there.
Okay. So turning your attention to the screen, do you see the 3 images on your screen?
Yes.
Describe for the members of the jury where these cameras are located, starting with the camera on the left. Are you familiar with this stairwell?
Yes.
Did you personally walk this stairwell?
Many times.
Where is this stairwell in reference to the 1200 building or inside the 1200 building?
The picture on the left is coming down from the second floor of the east stairwell down to the first floor. That door that's open on the bottom is where Nicholas Cruz first entered into the hallway after loading his gun.
And the image in the middle, what are we looking at?
That's, again, a camera from the actual the hallway itself shooting westbound down the hallway.
So this camera is located on the east side of the hallway?
Yeah, it's facing from
west.
the east door. It's a camera that shoots westbound towards the west door of the first floor.
And the image on the right, are you familiar with this camera placement?
Yes.
Where is this camera placed?
That's the location by the 700 building, which is the building just west of the 1200 building.
Is this camera angled looking west to east?
I believe it's the opposite. I think it's east to west, but I mean, I'd have to actually watch it.
Okay, well, we're going to hit play.
Yeah, it looks to me it looks like it's east to west, but I may be wrong. Yeah, it's definitely that right screen is east.
Okay. That's
Left is east.
Okay, the right of the screen is east.
Yes.
Okay.
They have a big copy machine there. They're all huddled around the screen watching the same video. That's all defense. Or sorry, that's all prosecution. Defense is watching. They have their own view here.
Detective, can you read for us on the top of the screen what time it is?
2:24:03 on all 3 cameras.
So they're doing a multi shot where they can see all the cameras simultaneously, a lot like I can.
Now,
on
the image on the left of
my
the
screen.
the east stairwell, is that stairwell? Let me show you a map.
They have like either a multiplexer, or they've probably synced up all the videos so they can watch all the different camera angles at the same time.
Judge, I'm showing what has been pre-marked as Defense Exhibit F. The east stairwell that we just saw on that screen, can you please point to where that is on this map? And now, is this, just show the jury where is north, south, east, and west on this map?
Well, north is that way, East is that way. This is where we were at with all the self-evacuating students, and this is west going towards where Nicholas Cruz pointed in.
So that stairwell that we just saw, show us one more time.
Right here.
If you know, what is the distance between this east side of the 1200 building and building 7, the 700 building?
I think it was 75 feet in that range.
Ooh, shoving the furniture around.
As part of your investigation into Nicholas Cruz, were you tasked with speaking with witnesses?
Yes.
Explain the process that you took with the witnesses in this case.
Well, one of the things we did, obviously, is we started interviewing people who knew him or had encounters with him in the past, people that were up at the school who potentially had dealt with him on whatever the circumstance was, any witnesses who came forward to the actual shooting incident themselves we interviewed. Most of the people we interviewed were background type witnesses.
Did you also interview the fact witnesses that had been on scene at the time of the shooting?
Yes.
As part of your investigation, did you interview the school resource officer, Scot Peterson?
Yes, I did.
And what detective assisted you with that interview?
Homicide Detective Jeff Curtis.
Why did you interview Scot Peterson?
He had dealings with Peterson in the past up at the school, or with Cruz earlier in his career up at the school. And we interviewed other BSO deputies who had calls of service involving Nicholas Cruz as well.
Please walk the jury through the process you took when interviewing Scot Peterson.
We were in a conference room, basically took a sworn statement from him with a digital tape recorder, asked him about the day of the incident, and asked him about any past dealings he had ever had with Nicholas Cruz and what those entailed.
When you're in the interview room, was it made clear that there was a recording device?
Yeah, it was right on the table in front. In fact, I swore him in or either I did or Jeff Curtis swore him in under oath.
When you say that you swore him in, what does that mean?
Basically, it's the oath to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. It's just a formality of, this is what you need to do, tell the truth, and if not, it's, perjury.
Did Scot Peterson indicate that he understood he was giving a sworn statement?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because, again, we had the interview, and
this is the perjury charge.
The tape recorder was right in front of him, and
they haven't addressed this.
I asked questions, he answered them.
When you were interviewing him, was it for matters material to your investigation of the shooter?
Yes.
And it was under oath, you already said, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why put a police officer under oath if you're taking a statement from him? Aren't you all...
You guys make me swear to my police reports, too. We do everything under oath.
So even though he was a police officer, you still swore him in like you did the civilian witnesses?
Yes, just like you did when I took the stand here.
Now, did you ask Deputy Peterson if he understood what perjury meant when you swore him in?
I'm going to refresh my memory exactly what the wording was. Yeah, I did, and his response, again, I don't know if that's me or Jeff talking, but his response was, I do.
Okay. How did Scot Peterson become aware of the fact that something was happening on campus?
He had heard, according to his statement, a faculty member named Drew Medina come over the school radio, not the police radio, but the school radio, saying something about hearing some sounds, possibly firecrackers or something to that effect at the 1200 building.
Did you confirm with Scot Peterson that he heard that the sounds were coming from the 1200 building?
Again, I'd have to look at his statement for exact terminology.
I'll refer you to page 7.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Scot Peterson's own words were that Andrew Medina said that he heard firecrackers in the 1200 building.
Did the defendant tell you how close he got to the 1200 building?
Yes.
And what were his words?
He got very close. I think he said within 10 feet, but again, I'd have to look at the exact. So that's what I recall. Yes, he got within a few feet.
Did he tell you that he heard gunfire?
Yes.
Did he tell you that he looked inside the building?
No, he did not.
Did he look in any of the windows?
No.
Did he tell you that he ever interacted with any students?
As I recall, he said he didn't see anybody coming out of the building.
Detective, was the statement that you took of the defendant transcribed?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you what has been pre-marked as States 3A. Can you take a look at this, please?
Yep, it's a transcribed copy of the digital sworn tape and I took from Scot Peterson.
That was a quick glance.
At this time, the state will move into evidence what's been pre-marked as 3A. It states 52.
Any objection?
We have no objection.
Without objection, states 3A for identification will now be in evidence. That is States Exhibit 52.
Judge, I'm going to need the Elmo.
Okay, so this is just addressing the perjury charge that Scot Peterson is facing. There's, in addition to the neglect charges, and there are a couple different phrasings of those, he also has a perjury charge. It sounds like the neglect charges are for the 6 people on the 3rd floor plus Coach Feist on the 1st floor, because from the timestamp they could see that he was shot after he arrived, even though it was on the other end of the building. But the fact that he was shot through open doors outside, that could really make the sounds very different.
It says 13:02 hours. Is that military time?
Yeah, it's 1:02, 1 p.m.
So what date and time did you take this statement?
February 16th, 2016.
Is it the defense phone? I swear if they answer this and say hello, that would be...
Actually, it should be 2018, but that's a transcription error.
Okay, and why do you say that?
Because I know it happened in 2018.
All right, and what is a CCN?
That's it's kind of like your badge number, but it's not. It's your ID number that everything, you do work related, they identify you by a number.
Now, this entire transcript is in evidence now, but I'm going to direct your attention to certain pages. Give me just a moment.
No problem.
Turning your attention to page 10 of the transcript.
Yes.
Would you please, I'll just read for the members of the jury the question and answer on page 10.
Starting at the highlighted section, the question was, okay, now, as you're approaching the building and you're that close and you're doing what you're talking about with both radios, are you in a position to cover or you're still standing? And he Mr. Peterson answer was no. That's where I then realized I'm out in the open in the middle. So I then go back towards the right at the corner of the 7 and 800 building, and I go back. I bring Greenleaf. I bring back over here, and then I obviously whip my gun out. I'm taking a position on the east side of the doorway, and I can also see down the sidewalk looking out west. I get a good two-dimensional of the whole building at that point.
Continue,
Want me to
please.
continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, then my question is, okay. Well, I say okay. So I'm right there. I'm on the radio. I can hear the units coming. And the next thing, while I'm keeping an eye on the door in the building, no shots, nothing anymore. It's quiet. And then my question, okay, so you're right here is what you're saying. We had a little map that he was pointing things out. And then his answer, yes, I'm right. I'm looking out so I can see the door and I can see out here. I got a good look, or I got a good.
Direct you to the top of the page. I'll ask you to read just this question and answer and repeat it here.
Okay, do you see any students or any people around the 1200 building at that point? And his answer was no, nobody.
Okay, turning your attention to page 12 of 36.
Okay.
And I'll ask you to read, starting with the highlighted portion.
All right, we're discussing Coral Springs Officer Burton in this section, and the question is, all right, what happens from there? Scot Peterson's answer was, and he runs up by the tree, and I'm just telling him, I heard a couple of shots, haven't heard anything since, and he's just taking cover by, behind the tree, and I'm taking cover here, and units are now starting, no more gunshots, and units are starting to come in. And then my question is, okay, as the units start to come in, what do you see and what do you do? And then the answer by Scot Peterson was, well, as the units start coming in, the first units are coming in saying, hey, there's someone shot over by the football field. I know where the football field is. It's quite a distance from this building. So when I start hearing they talk about the victim over by the football field, in my mind, I was is he maybe running towards that? Maybe he's not even in this building. He might be somewhere way out over there. I mean, in my mind, I obviously didn't know, where the shooter was. And then I started wondering if he had fled westbound at that point, because they were talking about people injured near the football field, which is quite a distance from the building. Want me to continue?
I'll direct you just a moment.
No problem.
I'm not sure why we're reading this if there was an audio recording.
Directing you to page 14.
Okay.
Especially if the first thing they did with the transcript was acknowledge a mistake in it. Where the date was off by 2 years.
Now, why did you ask him? What's in your thought process? What's the importance of asking him if he saw any children leave the building?
Well, again, we use the word active intelligence to try to figure out what's going on. Active intelligence goes beyond hearing gunshots. It's everything from seeing casings to a blood trail to getting information from people as to what's going on. Those are all the term active intelligence. So just like I was trying to do, interviewing all those students, I was asking him if he got any active intelligence by talking to anybody.
Okay, and the highlighted question and answer, please. Actually, if you could start right above it.
Did you go into 12 at all? No, because no. Question. Okay, now did you ever see, while everybody is starting to arrive, did you ever see any of the students leaving Building 12 at all? Yes. Question. Which were they, all the doors, or no, they were evacuating, they were telling them they were taking them out, and the kids were going out towards the parking lot. Okay, that's when the officers arrived, But you didn't see any kids? No, when I was on the scene, there were no individuals running out, none.
Did you confirm, oh, sorry, keep going.
Okay, so the question is, so there was no kids that ran out to say to you guys, hey, there's a guy up there or anything like that, and his answer was no.
Okay. Now, did you confirm, when you're taking this statement, have you already reviewed the surveillance cameras?
The only video we had reviewed at that point was the interior of the 1200 building. The exterior we had not viewed yet because it had been taken to another site. So when I was taking this statement, I had not seen any of the exterior videos at all.
So is the point of this statement just to gather whatever information he may have had from the scene that day?
Not only from the scene, but background about his interactions with Nicholas Cruz in the past.
Turn your attention to page, just a moment. $35 and $36. Now, how many gunshots did the defendant tell you that he heard?
2 or 3.
Explain to the members of the jury what the purpose is of asking this final question here towards the end of the interview that we see that's highlighted on page 35.
That's a standard question I ask anybody I'm interviewing. Is there anything else that I failed to ask you that you feel is important or relevant, again, that I haven't asked you?
So that wasn't something unique to this interview?
Every interview I do, I try to incorporate that because, again, I'm asking the questions, but is there something I haven't asked you that's important that I need to know?
I think the state needs to spell out the perjury charge a little bit better. They need to highlight it for the jury.
And I apologize, I asked you about it, but I didn't show you. I'm going to refer you to the bottom of page 9. Can you read that question at the bottom of page 9 for us?
Oh, the very last one?
Yes.
All right. Once you get closer and you hear those guys, how many rounds do you think you heard? And then that was the response on page 10. It wasn't many, 2, 3.
Detective Curcio, how many rounds in total were fired inside the 1200 building?
I'd have to look to make sure. Let's see. I believe it was over 130, 131, I believe.
So over 130?
Yes.
And how many rounds in total between the second and the third floor from that time after Aaron Feist is shot onward?
70.
Now, I asked you the names. Well, you did. You provided us with the names of the wounded as well on the third floor. Just a moment to confer, Your Honor.
I think the state's about ready to rest, or at least pass the witness here. So we're going to bring up the objection counter if that's the case. The counter is how many sustained objections the state has made that the judge has sustained. One more question here. A couple more. He does look nervous.
I'm going to direct you to page 14 of 36. You have it copied, that's fine. I'm going to ask you to read for us the question that begins with, okay, so there was, towards the bottom of the page.
Okay, so there was no kids that ran out to say to you guys, hey, there's a guy up there or anything of that, and the answer was no.
Next question.
The question, you didn't see any kids until police started being evacuated by the police, and then his response was yes.
Judge, I have nothing else.
Cross-examination, Court.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Objection counter's up. Get ready. Just about show the jury again. Matter of fact, I'm going to check and see if they did just show them again. That would be the third time today if they have. Nope, they did a good job on that pen.
Good morning, Detective.
Sir?
You and I have met during deposition, correct?
Yes.
In fact, there were 3 separate days that we conducted the deposition back in 2021, correct?
I don't remember the exact date, but there was 2.5 days worth of deposition, yes.
Okay. And you understood at that time that all your answers would be memorialized in a transcript, correct?
Yes.
And you rose your right hand and swore to tell the truth the same way you are now, correct?
Yes.
And we went over the details of your investigation into the Nicholas Cruz case, correct?
I'm sure we went into some part of it, yes. I don't know if we went into the full details of it.
And we also talked about your involvement in this particular case, correct?
Yes.
You remember the prosecutor asking you about the kids and adults who were shot on the first floor of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
Without question, my client wasn't even at the scene when those shootings took place. Isn't that correct?
No, he was on the scene when Aaron Feist got shot.
Got it. Except for Aaron Feist in the stairwell on the first floor. Other than that, my client was not even there when those kids were killed.
Not based on the video timeline. He was approaching the building.
So there's nothing he could have physically done to prevent their tragic demise. Isn't that correct, sir?
I disagree on Chris Hickson.
Okay. So we'll talk about the first shots that were fired in the stairwell. Remember when the prosecutor asked you about that? That was at 2:23:55. Correct? I'm sorry, 2:23:25. Isn't that correct?
Okay, the first shots when Luke Hoyer and you talking about those?
I'm referring to when Aaron Feist was shot at 2:23:25. Correct?
Okay. Yes.
And 1 second after that, you are aware that that's when my client announces shots fired, possible firecrackers, possible shots fired. Remember that?
I don't remember the exact terminology. That sounds accurate based on the timeline, yes.
And that was 1 second after Aaron Feist was shot at 2:23:25. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes.
And when Aaron Feist was shot, the door was open. The door to the stairwell was open. Isn't that correct?
That's what it appeared to be.
And Aaron Feist was on the opposite side of the door, correct?
He was, in my opinion, making entry when he was shot. He fell backwards outside the door.
Let me show you what is in evidence as defense exhibit number 1. And if you could show us where Aaron Feist's body was found. You just point to it, please.
In this area here, which is where he
Okay, you pointed up at the column. It was actually down on the concrete ground, correct?
Yeah, again, the body was moved, but it was down towards this area here.
Okay. Are you showing us that it was outside of this door?
Yeah, he fell outside the door.
Okay.
The door was open, and he fell backwards.
Now that shot was different than the other shots fired in that there was no door that was open when the other shots were fired, correct?
That's correct.
And then after Aaron Feist was shot, there are no additional shots for another 26 seconds. Isn't that correct?
I didn't have to look at the timeline. That sounds accurate.
Because the next round of shots into 12:31 was at 2:23:51. Isn't that correct?
Counsel's testifying.
No, that's what
You can answer.
Again, I'd have to look at the timeline for the exact times. He goes up to the second floor and he shoots the 6 rounds into the building. I don't remember the exact seconds, but it's all on a timeline.
Okay. And that would have been north. The shooter would be pointing his weapon north into room 1231. Isn't that correct?
Well, again, the building's kind of oriented, so he was been firing westbound, kind of into those second floor building classrooms where no one was hit because the rounds impacted the window on the west side of the 1200 building. We're talking about the second floor, right?
We're talking about the second floor. The round of gunfire into 1234, for example, would have been in the direction of my client, correct?
Yes.
And would have...
But that's kind of westbound.
Well,
I'll go northwest with you, but it's west. Cruz would have been firing westbound.
you're certain of that?
The 700 building is west of the 1200 building.
If the football field is west.
That's northwest, yes.
Okay. And my client would have been positioned south of the 1200 building, correct?
No, he's directly across from the 1200 building and the 700 building.
Doesn't that put him south, sir?
It's kind of southwest. The building is not exactly north-south. It's kind of on an angle.
My client's on the east side of the 1200 building, further south, correct?
No. He's on the west side of the 1200 building.
This guy's got his
The 1200 building is the furthest east building. So he's west of the 1200 building.
Is your testimony that my client was on the west side of the 1200 building or the east side?
He was at the 700 building, which is on the west side of the 1200 building. It's the building west of the 1200 building. We're going to put the map up. I'll show you. The 1200 building is the furthest east building.
Someone's about to be corrected.
Okay, if this is the 700 building.
Yeah, this is going west. So your client was west of the 1200 building.
You're saying that this is west? Isn't the football field west?
Okay, so 1200 building. This is where he was standing. So this is west. This whole area is west. This is east.
The football field is west of
That's
the 1200 building.
northwest. This is southwest.
And my client was over here, correct?
Yes.
So this would have put him south of the 1200 building, correct?
And west of the 1200 building. Westbound. I mean, we can argue with it. I mean, it's not east, because east is this way.
If he's positioned over
Testified
here,
up was north.
you're saying that this is west of the 1200 building?
Objection asked him.
I'm saying it's
No, hold on.
southwest.
The objection is overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can
That's your
answer.
testimony. Okay.
Well,
Regardless, though, my client could not have seen what was occurring on the west side of the 1200 building. Isn't that correct?
that was the point of that. Yes, you're correct.
And so Aaron Feist being shot, my client couldn't physically have seen that, correct?
No.
And this building, the 1200 building, is 73 yards long. Isn't that correct?
That sounds accurate.
So my client would have been at least 73 yards away from where Aaron Feist was shot. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And Aaron Feist was shot on the west side with the west side door open, correct?
Yes.
And the total amount of time that the shooter was in that building was 6 minutes and 36 seconds. Isn't that correct?
That sounds accurate, yes.
But my client wasn't there until the last 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So the total time that my client has to react, identify where the shooter or shooters are located, get in there and kill the killer would have been merely 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Isn't that correct?
Well, again, you're using the term kill the killer. I wouldn't use that term. Your time frame is correct.
Okay.
But the action, I kind of disagree with what you're saying the action would have been.
Okay. The total time that my client had to confront whoever was creating this massacre would have been 4 minutes and 15 seconds, correct?
That's correct.
And by the way, let me show you what's been marked as defense exhibit, looks like L or C. Okay? Let me show you and ask you if you recognize who's contained in this photograph.
What is the exhibit marked as?
It looks like an L, Judge, or a C. I'm not sure. I'm showing what's been marked as defense exhibit L. Do you recognize who's contained in that photo?
Yep.
Okay. Is that fair? Who is that?
Nicholas Jacob Cruz.
Okay. Does this fairly and accurately identify Nicholas Jacob Cruz?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, we've moved this into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
Without objection, defense L for identification will now be in evidence. That is defense exhibit 3.
Judge, if I can have this one, please.
As soon as Ms. Wilcox marks the exhibit.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to show you something here in a minute.
Would you like to publish this?
Yeah, you want another piece?
Yeah, please. So the jurors can see.
On a break, I'm going to show you a little bit of orientation stuff. I think will be interesting. Yeah.
That's Nicholas Cruz, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Is that the person responsible for killing all those people?
Yes, he is.
And you were the lead investigator in this case, correct?
Yes, I was.
He had nobody else with him, correct?
No, he did not.
But at the time, you didn't know it, correct, when you arrived on scene?
No.
In fact, none of the officers that worked for BSO would have known that there was just one shooter on campus, correct?
That's correct.
Your role is not as the lead investigator in the case against Scot Peterson, correct?
No, it is not.
You are the lead investigator in the state of Florida versus Nicholas Cruz, correct?
I was, yes.
That case is over with, correct?
Yes.
And the way that it worked in that case is that you conducted a very professional and thorough investigation, did you not?
I don't know if that's a statement or a question. I would like to believe I did, but...
Yeah, no, it is. It's a statement. Do you agree with that?
I did an investigation that culminated in him pleading guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder.
And the investigation was extensive over many, many years even, correct?
That is correct.
And during that time, you interviewed numerous witnesses, correct?
Yes.
You take sworn statements from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of witnesses, correct?
Not so much hundreds on this case, but in my career, yes, hundreds of witnesses.
Okay. And you have pages of reports, correct?
On this case, yes.
And when we say on this case, we're referring to Nicholas Cruz, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're talking about right now. Okay? Just want to know what your role was in Nicholas Cruz and what a lead investigator does in a case, right?
Yes.
And you don't determine what charges get filed, correct?
No, well, in this case, we charged him with a probable cause affidavit.
You keep saying in this case. We're referring to Nicholas Cruz, correct? So I'm just asking you, ultimately, a prosecutor in the Nicholas Cruz case makes the determination what charges should be filed, correct?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, that's sustained.
The prosecutor doesn't investigate the case. That's your job, correct?
Objection, relevance.
No, that's overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer that question.
Yes, but in that case, it was presented to a grand jury, and then the state attorney, obviously, from there took over.
In cases where there's no grand jury, you do an investigation, correct?
Yes.
You present your reports to the prosecutor, correct?
Yes.
And it's important that those reports are very accurate and detailed, correct?
Yes.
For two primary purposes. Number one, you have to rely upon the accuracy of those reports years later when you testify, correct?
Yes.
And you often refresh your recollection utilizing those reports, correct?
Yes.
But also because you're submitting reports to a prosecutor for them to determine what the facts are, correct?
Well, the report is based on statements, so they have both the statements and the report to rely on.
And then based upon what's submitted to the prosecutor decides what might the appropriate charges be, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's sustained.
I'm sorry.
Ding, ding, ding.
And you were not the lead investigator in this case. That was Keith Riddick. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, regarding the shooting, you weren't there when any of the gunshots rang out, correct?
That is correct.
You have no first-hand knowledge of how challenging it was to determine precisely where the shooters were located based upon sound, correct?
I would say in this case, that's correct.
You must have spoken, well, let me ask you, did you interview any witnesses who heard shots being fired to find out where they thought those shots were coming from?
In reference to my investigation, I interviewed some of them. A lot of them were interviewed by Keith Riddick, but yes, I interviewed some of them.
Okay. And did you ever supply any of those names to Keith Riddick?
Yes.
And in those statements, you would have identified where they were positioned, correct?
Yes.
And where they thought the shots might have been coming from, correct?
Yes.
And you thought that was being of service to Keith Riddick, so he can include that as part of the case against Scot Peterson, correct?
Again, when I would come upon somebody, on my case that I was interviewing, if it crossed over into what Keith Riddick was investigating, I would say, in particular, this is a guy, have you interviewed him yet?
Did he cherry pick?
Did you, through your investigation, ever compile a list of all of the hundreds of students who were coming out of the building to determine where they were when the shots rang out and where they thought the shots were coming from?
What we did, and this is going to be somewhat of a long answer, since we evacuated the entire school, we had to get in contact with everybody who was on campus that day to find out if they heard shots or what they saw. And it wasn't just me doing it, it was hundreds of detectives from every agency. If they heard or saw something of relevance, it was then funneled back to us. If they didn't, if they were like in the, 800 building and they didn't see or hear anything, then they were not provided, I didn't get their names, they were just documented by the...
Is it your testimony that you spoke or had someone speak to every one of the, let's say, 1,000 of kids that were both in the 700 building and the neighboring buildings that came out during the fire alarm?
We split up the school roster of not only staff members but students, and when I say we, I'm talking about the sheriff's office, and detectives contacted, they had like 25 on a sheet, and they were supposed to contact every one of them to find out if they had any relevant information towards the investigation.
Where are those sheets?
They're in the case file. But anybody who had significant information then was funneled back to a detective to be formally interviewed. If they just hid in the auditorium and they didn't see or hear anything, then they were not funneled back to us.
I'm referring to kids who came out of these buildings and heard shots fired. Where are those? Those notes are in the case file?
No, again, what I'm telling you is everybody who was on campus was recontacted because we had sent everybody potentially running off campus. The investigation that you're talking about is Keith Riddick's files.
Right, okay.
I mean, if I had a crossover witness...
Fair enough, I understand that you're not the lead on this case. So it's Keith Riddick who would have been responsible for what you're talking about, correct?
If I can I give you a very short example of
I just want to know if the answer is yes or no. It would have been Keith Riddick responsible for that, not you, correct?
Keith Riddick was responsible for the investigation about the police response, not just Scot Peterson, but any police response. Mine was Nicholas Cruz.
I understand, but Keith Riddick is the sole lead investigator in the case against Scot Peterson. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you arrived on scene, did you know that Coral Springs had a separate 911 call center?
No, I did not.
You learned that after the fact, right?
Yes.
Did you think when you arrived that when people were calling in to 911 saying there's a shooter in the 1200 building and kids are being killed, that somehow that information was being disseminated to BSO?
Again, when I'm on scene, I didn't know that even existed. Obviously, afterwards, I learned about that issue.
Also, in terms of patching, did you think that Coral Springs Radio would have been patched with BSO so that they could be working in concert together?
That's a normal protocol when you have agencies that are not a part of the BSO radio system.
It's normal protocol, but it was protocol that you learned was not followed in this case, correct?
Boom.
I think it was attempted, but because of the radio problems that day, on both ends, they weren't able to accomplish it. I think they tried to patch, but the BSO radio system was failing based on how many radios were trying to key up at the same time, where you would I don't even know what the term is anymore. It would go into fail-soft mode, where you couldn't transmit and you couldn't hear.
Fail-safe where it doesn't work.
How fair is that to officers who are on the scene?
I was one of the officers on the scene. I mean, I don't know how fair it is. That's just what happened. It's just the way, unfortunately, the way it happened that day.
When you say unfortunate, why is it unfortunate?
Because, again, you're trying to gather real-time intelligence, and as police officers in the modern era, we rely on our radios.
Right.
And to get communications from people who have the best real-time intelligence. And in this case, because the radios failed, it was a difficult task.
Impossible for some who would try to get on their radios and it would throttle, correct?
Yes.
Explain for the jurors what would happen if someone had some important real-time intelligence to convey to my client or other officers on the scene. Tell us what would happen.
Again, the technology is well beyond my expertise, but if you try to transmit, it would make this alarming boinking sound, which meant it wasn't coming over because there were just too many people trying to either transmit or they were flooding. There's only so many slots that you can get on the radio system, and once that overfills, it goes into fail-safe or fail-soft.
We need to hear that alarming boinking sound.
And so first responders, you would agree, were grossly hindered by the fact that the radios were not working properly, correct?
I would say that's accurate.
The fact that the radios with Coral Springs were not patched, correct?
Yes.
And that nobody from Coral Springs called BSO dispatch to say, hey, here's some information you might want to convey to your officers, correct?
I know they tried to transfer some 911 calls, and in some cases that failed as well. Because Coral Springs was getting the 911 calls from, in some cases, inside the building, and when they would try to transfer them to BSO, the transfers weren't going through.
And so all that information was never conveyed to BSO officers like my client. Isn't that correct?
No, it wasn't given over the radio at all that I can recall.
And there's no question through your investigation you learned that there were numerous children calling in from the 1200 building indicating exactly where the shooter was located, correct?
Children and teachers.
And that went to Carl Springs, not BSO. Isn't that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
You agree that that is unacceptable, correct?
Objection, Judge.
Yeah, but that's sustained. His opinion, he's a fact witness, not an expert witness. His opinion is not relevant. Go ahead, sir.
That is not how you guys were trained, correct?
I would say it's not optimum because it's not the way we're trained. It's just the fact that if you're responding to an incident, again, you're trying to get real-time intelligence by whatever means you can, and a 911 call from inside the building is real-time intelligence.
When you arrived on scene, I think you testified earlier that a lieutenant colonel told you that someone was shot, correct?
No, that was while I was at the public safety building.
Okay. That information never came out over your BSO radio, correct?
I think that may have been one of the guys on Holmberg actually saying he had a guy shot at the football field, which was Mr. Lamont.
That is correct. Football field. Did you hear that announcement saying that somebody was on the football field being shot?
Well, when a lieutenant colonel came running in, he didn't say football field. He just said there was a student shot and there was a shooting up at the school.
My question is, did you hear Deputy Kratz announce in real time that the shots were coming from the football field?
I didn't the day of the incident. I heard it afterwards while I was doing my investigation.
And just so we're clear, that when Deputy Kratz makes that announcement during the shooting, the shooter was in the middle of the 3rd floor, correct? Did you match that up?
I don't know if he was in the middle. I think he was in the teacher's planning room, I believe.
He had not gotten to the teaching planning room, isn't that correct?
I'd have to look at the timeline. I just know he was on the 3rd floor.
That's correct. Now, you told the prosecutor that the purpose of your interview with my client was to find out more about Nicholas Cruz. That's what you said, correct?
Well, that was part of it.
Right. So tell the jurors the other part of it, sir.
The part of it, which is the beginning stages, is what he saw, your client, and what he heard that day, where he was at.
Just so we're clear, this is not a formal debriefing as required by the active shooter policy, correct? That wasn't your purpose.
No, I'm a homicide detective. I don't do formal debriefings.
Got it. You're aware that the active shooter policy requires timely debriefings of officers. You're aware of that, correct?
I'd have to read it again, but that sounds accurate.
Just so we're clear, a debriefing is when you get into detail with someone to learn exactly what they know, what they feel, what they think, correct?
Debriefing, in my opinion, is so you can review what happened to make things better if there was an issue.
That was not your purpose, correct?
No, I was a homicide investigator in charge of the investigation of the killings.
And isn't it a fact that this interview actually happened because, first of all, Brian Tutler and Zach Scott were liaisons to the families, correct?
That's correct.
And family members started asking where Peterson was during the shooting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll pause on the objection because we're over for a restroom break anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause on the cross-examination. I'm going to give you a real quick restroom break. Same admonition as always.
Is that sustained?
Please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony.
So we get to see the logo. We haven't seen that very much. I'm not sure if that was sustained. Do you want that as a 102? Are we going to take a 102? I think that would be sustained because if it was not sustained, the judge would have let him finish and then end. They said it was facts not in evidence, hearsay, and...
You're outside the presence of the jury. Everyone can be seated. Ms. Combs, what's your legal objection?
Judge, it's hearsay, first of all, as to what these other men, I think their names were Zach. I don't know who their names were, but also it's irrelevant as to the motivations behind...
Irrelevant, hearsay.
So the question to the witness was, isn't it true that parents made certain statements out of court that are not to this witness? So why is that not hearsay?
Judge, first of all, it's impeachment. His answer was the only reason why I conducted this interview was to, quote, find out about Nicholas Cruz.
Is it improper?
To impeach him, first and foremost, his testimony and deposition is that they were there to find out what occurred because the family members started asking where Peterson was during the shooting, and that then his sergeant said, we then need to interview Peterson, And that's when they went to the public safety building for the sworn
Okay,
statement.
so then what, again, we've had
How's
this
it not
discussion
hearsay?
before. What is the relevance for this jury as to why?
At a minimum, it's impeachment, Judge. He said that the purpose was for one thing, but they're actually a sworn testimony, and he began to concede that there was another purpose as to why it was.
So are you saying it's not hearsay because you're using it for impeachment purposes?
I'm saying it goes to, it's not hearsay because it goes to state of mind. Why did he conduct this?
Isn't it not being offered for the truth? You're asserting that that actually happened, right? So
No.
It's an out-of-court statement being asserted for the truth of the matter.
It goes to his state of mind.
Whose state of mind?
This witness's
Why
state
is
of
the
mind
state of mind
as to
relevant
why.
as to what this jury has to decide? Again, I'm going to let you do a proffer outside of the presence of the jury when we're done with all this, but this inures to the discussion that we've had several times before. This jury isn't going to be asked to decide why charges were filed or what the reason charges were filed. The only decision they have to make is, has the state proven beyond a reasonable doubt each element of the crimes charged? The reason that the charges were filed is not in the purview of the jury, and I'm going to sustain the state's objection. I'm not going to let you.
Your Honor, it's impeachment. The officer testified. The sole reason was to find out about Nicholas Cruz. I can't bring up...
That's not what he said.
No, it's not.
Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir.
Sorry. You want me to leave, Your Honor?
If you would like to step down and use the restroom, you just can't talk to anyone about your testimony.
He left off the other. He left off the other portion, Judge, that he was asked by family members.
I disagree with you, sir. He said, you asked him that last question, and he said it was two reasons. Number one, I was the homicide detective for Nicholas Cruz. Number two, I wanted to find out what Mr. Peterson
Right. He
said.
left out the other reason.
That doesn't matter, Mr. Adler.
Okay.
I know you don't agree with my ruling, sir, but it doesn't matter.
Then note my objection for the record, okay? And if you're sustaining the objection, again, I'm
No, I'm going to, when we're done with redirect examination, if there is any, with recross if there is any, I'll send the jury out again, and you may make your record and ask the detective whatever you would like to ask to as a proffer.
Yeah, and
Similarly
Judge,
as I'd let you do with the other.
the state was the one who asked him what his reasons were for doing, and he left out the primary reason why he did this, which is what he tells us in deposition. In deposition, he said the primary reason was because the families wanted to know where Peterson was at. And I'm not allowed to bring that out in front of the jury? Okay, so note my objection.
State, anything else you need me to address?
No, Judge.
All right, real quick, 5-minute restroom break. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
This that gives you a little peek into what the sidebars just might be like that we can't hear. Wow. Oh, this is. I told you it was going to be spicy. It's going to be very spicy. We're up to 102 on the objection count. We're up over the century mark. Mark is getting fired up, and I think he's got more. This isn't all he has. First of all, let's do a quick little exercise, shall we? Everyone, we're going to go to geography class now, and we're going to learn a little bit about directions, because during this cross-examination, one of the things Mark Eiglarsh asked this witness was which direction Scot Peterson was from the building. And this was important because there were shots fired on the second floor, 6 shots fired into a building on the room on the second floor. I think it was 1234, 1236. I don't recall the room number, but 6 shots were fired. They did not hit anyone. No one was wounded or killed on the second floor to my recollection. And these shots were fired. So let me do just a little quick exercise. We're going to break out the map, and I'm going to bring you all with me, and just to orient everyone on where we are. We're going to start here with Earth. This is Earth. Okay. When it comes to north, south, east, west, that only has to do with Earth. So let's start here. Let's see if we can find a continent that we recognize. Let's see. Let's do it this one. This is a general one. It happens to be the one I'm residing on. And we're going to do a quick little zoom. I'm going to do a check and say, can you show me Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School? Right here. Let's zoom in. Join with me as we zoom in and look at the school. Notice the directions. All right, here we are. This is the school grounds. This is the map we've seen. Okay, we've watched this over and over. We've seen this layout of the school. We see the football field. We see the baseball field. We see the parking lots. We've got the 700 building, the 1200 building. I'm going to set this up for you very, very simply. Okay, I'm not even going to cheat and try to orient it the way I think. Yeah, fake news, Earth is flat. Thank you, Ivan, for that. I'm glad you all came for this lesson. I'm going to do one quick little thing here. I'm going to click this bottom right-hand button, which is the compass, which is where Google Earth according to all its genius and knowledge and power and mystical abilities, is going to change this picture to orient so the top of the screen is in the direction of north. So here we go. We can count down. Ready? With 3, 2, 1. Boom. That's it. This is north. I don't know how that the detective testified that down is anything other than south on this picture, because this is basically the screenshot of what the state's exhibit was, the big huge one they held up there for almost every single witness to point out and step down and point out where things happened, and now we're saying that this is east or west or down is south. Down is south on this map. Okay, so I rant over. I think Mark is doing a fantastic job. Zooming in, we're looking specifically on this building. If I orient it one more time, it is perfectly lined up with north-south. This is not a building that's built on a skew, and it's like, it's hard to tell. North is sort of like a little bit to the right. Down is south, okay? This is as square with the compass as possible. This right here is the 1200 building. This right here is the 700 building. Down here in this area, this is where Scot Peterson was. And they want to say that that's not south down from the, yeah, it's bizarre. All right. Rant is over. Thank you for joining me in geography. You guys all pass. You all pass. Good work. Good work. We need Dr. G to analyze RA today. It's been a day and a half already. We need the yoga music again. Where's that music? I think we need the peaceful sad piano. Sad piano is the only way that I can really calm down. Oh, there it is. That's going to end up on TikTok. Man. Okay. I feel better having got that out. Judy says, I suck at geography and I got 100% on this quiz. Rant is over. Let's see a ball chain trick, please. We can do that, kitty kitty bang bang, but it'll make a mess on the floor, and I don't have time to pick it up. That's the only thing. Thank you. Yes, I'm down off my soapbox now. There are a few classes that I do well at, but no, the one that only asks which direction is north, I passed. I passed that class. I got an A. We need a telemarketer. Oh, now would be a bad time to call, honestly. I might have to get 80s Music Man to edit out some of the words. Ella says, I like this recovery addict energy. It is good to be back. Let me tell you, it was... I realize I've got some bad news here in just a minute, but it's good to be back. This is Wednesday, okay? I was back yesterday. Yesterday was weird. I was off. It was one of those days you come back from a long vacation and you need another vacation just to get normal, to get reset. I'm back today. I'm feeling myself again, okay? Minus the Wednesday hump day yell this morning where I think I gave it a little too much. I sort of redeemed myself on the happy birthday song, hitting the low note there. I think I nailed that. I'm pretty happy about that. Might even do the whole You Got Talent or whatever it is that show is. I'll have to try that. Stress Cow is a good time to bring out the Stress Cow, and thank you for that. The bad news is that I am going out of town tomorrow and Friday. So I will not be elevating my blood pressure watching more of this trial because I'll be up in Virginia at Colonial Williamsburg and the College of Williams and Mary, I think it is, which is cool. I'm super excited about that. It's another youth trip that I get to chaperone on. I signed up just to be a driver, and it turns out that I'm like leading a group, and my day is completely packed. Like from about 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, I have no free time every day that I'm up there. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to go live at all. I'll take some of my equipment, not as much as I took camping, which is sort of ironic because going out and, in the wilderness and living in a tent basically is a little harder to live stream from than on a college campus. But I'm going to take some of my equipment in case I get an opportunity. I'd love to take you along for a little tour of Colonial Williamsburg. It is fantastic. You get to see just amazing stuff. Anyway, so I'll be gone Thursday and Friday, and then I'll be back, and I won't be gone again until the week before Sarah Boone. So yes, this is Stress Cow. If you want a Stress Cow for yourself, I'm about to expire this one after today. You can type !cow in chat, and it will bring up the link for this particular Stress Cow, which originally we had Cash Cow was what you guys named him, which is a great name for a cow. I mean, he's cute. Look at this. I guess I could, well, it's a she, based on what I learned in biology classes. Anyway, Cash Cow was the first cow. It expired. It had a milk catastrophe. It was an utter disaster. And Mrs. R.A. was the recipient of the, Anyway, so this is the second one. This is the replacement. This is Mupak, the replacement for the Cash Cow. Don't forget extension cords. I did forget extension cords last time. It'll be fun. I will be gone for 2 days. Actually, I'll be gone for 3, but Saturday normally we don't broadcast. What I will do Friday night is I'm trying to do the podcast from up there. So I'm going to see if I can make that happen. I might have to give Weather Watch some hard news and maybe see if we can get somebody in to step in and fill for me. Weather Watch, who would you trust to to take on the other side of that and run the podcast without me? All right. I made it sound like it would be weeks. No, it's just a couple days. It was an utter disaster. It was really bad. It did explode all over Mrs. R.A. I hope we're not in verdict watch. Here's what I think. I think defense has a lot of witnesses to bring on. I realize a lot of them are going to be shorter witnesses. Hopefully they have a couple experts that take some time that can bore you a little bit until I get back. Can we please just wait till Monday for a verdict watch? That would be great. Maybe we could get Matthew Harris to fill in. I nominate Matthew. Matthew and Thomas could run the podcast, and you could see what a real podcast looks like without me in there to muck it up. Matthew would be a great substitute. I agree, and they're good friends as well. So let's see. How long are you going away just before the Sarah Boone case? I'm going to be going to the mountains of North Carolina for 1 week. 1 week. It's another week long. This is. I went just with girls last time. I'm going just with boys this time. So it's the other half. Hopefully it's a little cooler than what it was. Okay. Okay, we're still waiting. Checking out court. This is what we see. Nothing's happening there as of right now. There's our count. Our counter is at 102, which is great. We'll bring that back up. Why is that not working? Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong page. Here we go. There we go. All right. Where were we? I live in the mountains of North Carolina. Proud Mama. I don't know exactly where I'm going. I know it's like 4 hours away, 4 hours west, and I'm still in North Carolina. Most states I've lived in, I could not drive 4 hours west and still be in the same state. But I will do that this next month. Okay, just got back. Are you not here tomorrow and Friday? Sorry, Rudy, I will be gone. I'll be up in Virginia for those days. Do they have an actual seal in that courtroom? Why digital version? No, I don't think they have a seal. The backdrop behind the judge is smooth wood panels, and it's funny because the camera angle and the panel, the lines of the panel, it looks like one of the lines provided his haircut, that flap top haircut. It just matches perfectly with that, and it lines up. I always get a chuckle out of that when I see it. But it's just the camera angle is perfect for that. Eddie, I can drive 7 hours west and still be in my same state. That puts you either in Texas or Alaska. 7 hours is a long time. Let's see, what else? What other state? Maybe Montana? Could you do 7 hours across Montana from east to west? It's rather chilly in Virginia. Bring a jacket. By chilly, VC, what temperature are you saying? Because I typically wear pants 1 day a week, and that's on Sunday at church. I'm going to need a weather report for Williamsburg. If somebody could do that. Defense expected 5 days for witnesses, but this isn't taking 2 months as expected. Right, but I think defense had a better timeline. I just think the state thought it was going to take longer than they did. They were probably anticipating a lot more cross of witnesses than they got, which they did not get from the defense. The defense isn't crossing. They object to a lot of the things that are being brought up. But
we'll go back on the record.
Oh, we're going back on the record. Here we go. I think this is a proffer outside the presence of the jury, which means we're going to have to bring up the counter again. This is like in the Murdaugh trial where we got Tinsley and all that fun information. The jury didn't get to hear that. We're basically going to go down this road again, and the judge is going to see if he's going to allow some of this.
Courtroom don't even have a clock.
Hey, there is a seal. How did I miss that seal above the judge? Or maybe it's... I don't know. It doesn't look the same as the state of Florida seal. Maybe the one on the screen is different. The one on the wall is the actual seal.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go back on the record. This is State versus Scot Peterson, 197166 CF10A. I continue to have Ms. Gomes, Mr. Tillman, Mr. Klinger present for the state. I continue to have Mr. Igarsh present with Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of the jury. The witness remains on the witness stand. State, anything you need me to address before we bring the jury back in?
No, Judge.
Defense, anything you need me to address before we bring the jury back in?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, please bring the jury back.
Okay, jury is coming back in, so there's no proffer. I thought he said he was going to allow a proffer. Yeah, it's going to be miserable walking around sweating to death in a high humidity. That's warm, Christy. Thank you. I appreciate all the weather reports for Virginia for tomorrow. I'll be up there pretty early. Should be there by 11 a.m. if I leave at 7 and don't speed very much. Ivan, your picture is censored. I don't know why. It's got a little cloud next to it, which nobody else has. Did you recently change it? Gonna need a rain jacket. That's not fun. That just keeps the humidity closer to me. Still on cross for the lead detective. I believe they're going to continue. I'm not sure how much more Mark has for this guy. I'm not sure if that, if he goes back to the directions. He's basically got the guy to admit that he doesn't know which way is north, which is a pretty big win for defense, especially because previously, like literally with the state using the same map, he said up was north, and now down is not south. Who is it?
Jurors entering.
Come on in.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Come on in.
Oh, there they are. Hello, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome
Greetings,
back.
ma'am. Yes, we're staring right at the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, once you're back at those seats, you may be
Great job,
seated.
cameraman.
All the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get those notepads back out.
Yeah. You called it, Cachette. They get to use their notepads again. Why don't we just watch them take their notepads out, since we watched them so many times today already?
When we took our quick restroom break, we were in the middle of the cross-examination of the witness. The witness remains on the witness stand under oath. Mr. Igarsh, when you're all ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Everyone's seen these jurors. Oh, there they are again. Hello.
When you conducted the interview of my client, there was no pending criminal investigation, correct?
Against your client?
Yeah.
No.
There wasn't even an internal affairs investigation, correct?
No, there was not.
Relevance.
What's the motive?
Yeah, no, that's sustained. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
There had not been any, at that point, any public outcry at all?
Objection, Your Honor.
Hold on. I didn't hear the question yet. Go ahead, sir.
There had not been any public outcry to place my client in any headspace that there was something that anybody was thinking that he did wrong, correct?
State what is the objection.
As to the relevance.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Okay, he literally, he just, that question, okay, sorry, I'm going to turn this off for a second. That question was literally the whole case against the defendant. The state objected saying relevance, and the judge sustained it. In one question, he wrapped up the entire question, the entire case against the defendant here, and the judge sustained it saying it's irrelevant. Whew. That was And now Mark asked for a sidebar. And you can imagine, if we heard the little sidebar where the jury wasn't here, this is happening again. There's a little bit of spiciness. There's respect. Mark is respectful to the judge. But you can hear when he says, preserve for the record my objection, basically saying, you are wrong and this will be appealed. That's what he's saying to the judge every time that happens. Oh, wow. Okay. Why does she object before the question ends? She's doing that because if she doesn't, the witness answers quickly and she loses her opportunity. If the witness answers, then the jury's heard it. You can't unring the bell. So she sort of has to object before the question's over. It's a smart move on her part. The judge is right, saying, I still haven't heard the question. Right? He has to hear the question before he can rule on it. But she wants to get her foot in the door before the witness speaks. It's smart on her part to do that. I don't know that the judge is horrible. He definitely seems biased, but he's yeah. I don't know. I want to see more. It's possible that after the state rests their case, that the defense comes out and says, Judge, there's not enough evidence. They haven't proved their case, and the judge says, you're right, and throws it out. It could happen. A biased judge is not a good thing. Well, if we're just keeping score, assuming the score is the only thing that matters, and it isn't. Right? You can lose a whole bunch of battles and still win the war. If we're just keeping score, it would look like the judge is on the side of the prosecution based on just objections. But the judge is not the one that makes the objections. He just rules on them. And it could be, it would have been, had Mark made a lot more objections, which he could have done. As far as leading, he could have done objections on I guess, probably some more on relevance that I think he didn't do. But I think it's been strategic on his part not to be that obstinate lawyer that's constantly just trying to prevent anything. They've gone along with everything the state said. The state says, hey, we've got these witnesses that can't make it. Well, the defendant has a right to have them present evidence in front of him. He says, it's fine. Use Zoom. It's fine. Not a problem. We're good with you. We'll support, anyway. Not a problem for us, Judge. We want them to bring their evidence. We don't think they have enough to convict us. We don't think they're going to be able to meet the level of have the jury convict on this because it doesn't meet the elements of the charge. We're fine with, we've bent over backwards to help the state in everywhere they can. But in doing that, they also did not make many objections. I think they possibly could have objected to this particular witness during the state's prosecution. They've still got the white noise going. I'm trying not to miss a moment of words, but the white noise is pegged. All right, it's spicy today. I love it. Knoxville agent, I don't know what it is. I'm hungry. I'm hangry. I need some pickles. I need spicy maple bourbon pickles. That's what I need. I don't have any right now, and I need to go get some. Female lawyer is great. Bonus points for clothing style, but I still have the lawyer. I can't comment on clothing style, obviously. Generally, whatever somebody wears to court, as long as the judge thinks that's appropriate, that's good enough for me. But I think they are good. Okay, here we go.
My client didn't come in with a
Hello,
lawyer,
jury.
correct?
That's correct.
That's 6 times.
He didn't have the benefit of reviewing any reports before he gave his statement, correct?
The only thing he brought was some paperwork that he had on Nicholas Cruz from the school.
That's it. But nothing regarding, anything else, correct?
Well, I think one of them was an official report that he had been involved in with Nicholas Cruz, but that's the only report I remember.
Okay.
But not my investigation. None of my reports were offered yet.
Correct. So he had no reports yet regarding what happened on the day in question, correct?
No.
Nor was he given the opportunity to review any videos, correct?
No.
So he comes in there and he answered every single one of your questions, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember any he couldn't answer.
In other words, he didn't refuse to answer any questions, correct?
No, he did not.
And you've been in law enforcement for decades. You've become a pretty good judge of character as to whether you're seeing somebody who outright looks like they're lying to you, correct?
Judge.
Well, what's the legal objection?
The relevance as to his judge of character when somebody is lying.
Well, that wasn't the specific question. As to that question, it's overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer.
Could you ask it again so I get specifics?
For decades, you've been interviewing people, right?
43
You
years.
generally can get a sense when somebody is lying to you, correct?
What I end up doing is I listen to what people say, and then I evaluate through, and investigation, whether or not, I try not to be so open-minded that, I believe I'm clairvoyant and I can tell
Try
someone's
not to
telling
be
the
so
truth.
open-minded.
At no point, while you're speaking with my client for the time that he was with you, did you think right then and there, gosh, this guy's lying to me the way that he's speaking to me, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained.
You tell my client that you're conducting this interview in a chronological order, correct?
Yes,
And that means you go from the beginning, and then you say, and then what happened after that, correct?
well, it's got a reverse chronological from the day of the shooting, then backwards with Nicholas Cruz's background.
That's correct. The interview that you conducted of Nicholas Cruz, which lasted for hours, how long was that transcript? How many pages?
I have no idea.
I mean, hundreds, correct?
Again, I have no idea.
This was merely 36 pages, correct?
Yes.
And up to page 16 is all that you discuss about what happened that day, correct?
Yeah, it looks like 15, 16 where we start going into the background.
Right. So from page 17 on, all the way to the end, there's no discussion at all about what happened on the day of the shooting, correct?
Towards the end, when I make that comment, is there anything else about the day of the shooting or?
Other than that one question, there's nothing from page 17 to 36 where you discuss any further details about what occurred on the day of the shooting. Isn't that correct, sir?
Not particularly that I can recall, but I'd have to read every page. I know we talked about the fire alarm and protocol and what to do a fire alarm versus an active shooter situation, but that was more a general questions rather than the day of the incident.
In fact, at the top of page 17, you start off with Cruz. All right, how long have you known Nicholas Cruz?
Yes.
You shift your discussion to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's focus on the first 16 pages, okay?
Okay.
And one of the first things that he tells you is that prior to hearing the fire alarm, Scott was in his office researching a statute concerning a student who had a fake driver's license. Isn't that correct?
What page are you at, just so I can refresh my memory? I know he said he was doing some fraudulent driver's license investigation.
Okay, you remember that, correct?
Yeah.
In your research, did you find that that was the truth or a lie?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
Okay.
Relevance.
Did he tell you that the student's father was coming to the campus and he was going to meet with him? Do you remember him telling you that?
I'd have to look at the page. That sounds accurate, but if you have the page number, I can refresh my memory as we go.
Okay. My question is, do you remember him telling you that?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay.
I think he said something. He may have contacted him on the phone, is the way I remember it, but that's right.
And he tells you that he was in building 1 prior to the fire alarm going off, correct?
Yeah, I believe he said he was in his office, which is in building 1.
Okay. And that is quite a distance from the 1200 building, isn't that correct?
It's probably 2 buildings.
And when he tells you that he was in the administrative office in building 1, you were able to confirm that by watching the video, correct?
He was near the 100 building. He was not, as I recall, he was not in it. He was down towards, I think there was a cafeteria down there, that area.
Is it your statement that he wasn't in the 100 building and then went out of the 100 building?
I just remember him being in the hallway.
Okay.
And as he approached going to the 1200 building, there's a golf cart which would have been in front of where his offices were, but he was not in that office.
And when he tells you that that Andrew Medina drove him and Greenleaf to the 1200 building, you confirm that on the video, correct?
Again, if you have the page number, I know that's what happened based on the video.
Okay.
I don't recall him actually saying that.
Someone could
I know he said he didn't see the golf cart originally that he normally gets on.
That's correct. Somebody could be inaccurate, but not necessarily be a liar, correct?
Sure.
In other words, if he tells you that he didn't see someone leaving the 1200 building during the shooting, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's lying about it, correct?
Objection, speculation, and opinion.
Yeah, that's sustained as to both.
Are you familiar with something called tunnel vision?
Yes.
Tell the jurors what tunnel vision is.
Tunnel vision, and again, this is my interpretation of it, is usually when you're involved in an encounter where you're personally under stress, as in a policeman, where you're being fired upon, where your vision becomes tunneled, where you don't see outside that, quote, tunnel.
Okay. And so, in other words, things could be blocked in the periphery because you're focused, laser focused on something right ahead of you, correct?
That's the term tunnel vision, yes.
And you're familiar with the fact that a number of officers were going through tunnel vision while they're at the scene because this was very stressful, correct?
Speculation.
Well, no, that's overruled. I don't want you to guess, or if you have personal knowledge, you can answer the question.
Unless you can show me a statement that says that, I don't recall anybody saying that to me personally.
Okay. And what about auditory exclusion? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've heard the term as well.
Okay. Tell the jurors what auditory exclusion is.
That you, again, under my terminology is you're the officer being fired upon. Sometimes you may not hear certain things that are occurring.
There are a lot of people who didn't hear all of the shots fired, correct?
Objection, relevance, hearsay.
It's sustained as to hearsay.
Did you interview people to determine how many shots they heard?
Yes.
Did anybody say they heard all 140 some odd shots?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, yeah, that is hearsay. That's from an out-of-court statement. That's sustained.
You are familiar with the fact that the students on the third floor didn't even hear the shots on the first floor, correct?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Did you watch the video of the students coming out into the third floor?
Yes.
Did you know what their demeanor appeared like?
Yes.
That demeanor changed from calm, did it not?
Well, there's so many different students. Some of them went from calm to panic, yes.
Okay. And that panic occurred because the shooter went on to the third floor and began shooting, correct?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Now, when you ask my client about how many shots he heard, there's one question that deals with that. Isn't that correct?
There's one question, but multiple answers during the statement. He talks about how many shots he heard after I asked that question.
Well, it's in evidence, so let's talk about it. Judge, if I can get this on, please. Page 9. You agree on page 9, at the very bottom. This is the first time you ask him, the question all the way at the bottom. This is the first time that you ask him about how many shots he hears. Isn't that correct?
No, but he answers above from the bottom where he hears the gunfire, but I ask him the amount on the bottom of the page.
Okay,
yes.
so the first time you ask him about the amount, and the only time you ask him about the amount, correct?
Yes.
All right, so that question is, okay, you say, okay, all right. Once you get closer and you hear those guys, what guys were you referring to?
Read the paragraph before that.
The attorney's taking the victory sip here.
Again, I don't know what the guys refers to. I'd have to make sure it's an accurate transcription, which I believe it is, but I don't recall what guys.
Let that sink in. He doesn't recall what the conversation was about that they're charging him perjury for.
Did you have an answer?
I just did answer it. You want me to repeat it? I don't know what the guys refers to, so I'd have to make sure from listening to the actual audio statement it's accurate, but I don't remember what guys it was.
Those are your words. Correct?
That's the transcription of what I asked, but the best evidence is the actual audio recording. So I'd have to listen to the audio recording.
As you sit here today, You don't know what guys you're referring to?
That's what I just answered. Yeah, I'd have to listen to the audio recording.
You do say, all right, okay. You get closer and you hear those guys. How many rounds do you think you've heard?
Yes.
And his answer is, it wasn't many, 2 or 3. That was his response, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it a fact that 2 or 3 is the exact number of shots that went into Aaron Fikes? Isn't that correct?
2 went into Aaron Fikes, yes.
Okay, so that was accurate. If he's referring to when he arrives at the building and he hears the shots fired, 2 would have been accurate, correct?
Objection, counsel testifying as to what is accurate and what is inaccurate.
Overrule that.
That's the thing.
So this is the only time in this deposition, strike that, this is the only time in this statement that you ask him how many shots that he heard, correct?
So the time I asked how many shots, yes.
Isn't it a fact that at no time do you say how many total shots did you hear from the time that you arrived to the time that you hear no longer any shooting?
No, I did not use the word totally. Again, he talked about it later in his statement to clarify what he was telling me.
Is it your testimony that at no time do you ever think to say how many total shots did you hear?
It was very clear from my question to him and his answers to me what we were talking about is he only heard 2 to 3 shots.
But then the very thing that he said, that you say after he says it wasn't many, 2 to 3, the next question you say is, okay, all right, what happens from there?
Boom.
Right?
Yes.
You weren't asking total number of shots. You were saying at that point when you're by the building. Isn't that what you were referring to?
Absolutely not. We're talking about shots being fired, what he heard. Because a little further down, he actually clarifies it again.
In retrospect, do you think that asking how many total shots fired would make it clear for everyone?
No, because I, again, think it was very clear in the interview what I was asking, and based on his answers several times during the statement, it was very clear he understood what my question was.
You've read the dispatch transcript to know exactly what my client was saying in real time, correct?
Yes.
He initially reports shots fired at 2:23:26, correct?
I'd have to see the timeline on the time, but that sounds accurate.
You do remember him again saying additionally, when there are additional shots fired, he gets on the radio and he does announce shots fired, correct?
Yes, and I believe you can actually hear the shots going off.
Did you ever, as part of your investigation, ever speak to Anna Ramos?
His name sounds familiar. I have to look at my reports. I believe so.
Jeffrey Morford?
Yes.
To confirm that they heard my client order a code red?
The police response part of the investigation was not conducted by me, but whether I asked them that, I'd have to look at the statements. It may have been in a statement somebody else took as part of the secondary investigation of your client and the other responding deputies.
I want to cover some more of the statements. My client is doing a diagram for you, correct?
I believe we had a map of the school.
And he was trying to assist you by drawing things out, correct?
Yes, or pointing out with his finger.
That wasn't included in this packet, correct?
The state brought, no, I didn't see it in the evidence.
Okay, it's not, can you just take a look? That drawing that he did, that's not part of what's in evidence there, correct?
Well, again, I recall it being a map. I don't want to refer to it as a drawing, but no, it's not in evidence.
Do you believe that he was assisting you as he was drawing for you?
He was helping clarify certain things, at the school locations.
My client gave you the name of the student that he was investigating who possessed the counterfeit license, correct?
Yes.
Did you investigate to determine whether that was accurate?
Again, that would have been part of the other response investigation by Inspector Riddick. Once I took this statement and the outside video came back from Quantico, I had no further follow-up on that type of investigation.
He does give you her name, Marisol West, correct?
Yes.
Now, 2 days after the shooting, my client is telling you that he thought the shots were outside of the 1200 building, correct?
I think he made some, and I had to look at the page, he said it was really close.
Right.
That those shots seemed like they were outside.
Okay.
And that was the 2 to 3 he was referring to.
He did tell you it was very loud, correct?
Yes.
He tells you that he got about 10 feet from the building, correct?
Yes.
And that's when he heard the gunfire, correct?
I believe that's accurate, yes.
He tells you that he didn't get the opportunity to actually open up the door before he hears the gunfire, correct?
I don't remember that exact terminology, but I don't think he said anything about opening the door, no.
You ask him specifically if he saw any muzzle flashes, correct?
Yes.
And he tells you, no, he didn't, correct?
That's correct.
Was there any evidence that you discovered of any muzzle flashes that were visible to anybody watching the building when the shooter was on the second or third floor?
The only evidence that I had which prompted that question was the impact to the second floor windows. So that's why that prompted that question.
Okay. And he tells you that he locked down the campus. He didn't want anybody coming onto the campus, correct?
Yes, that's what he did.
Did he indicate to you it's because he felt that it would be unsafe for people to traverse in that area?
I'd have to look at exactly why he did that, but that's what he did.
You're trained also to keep people out of a crime scene, correct?
Well, once the crime scene is secure, yes.
Okay. He tells you that he's speaking on both of his radios, the school and the police radio, correct?
Yes.
And he indicates to you that after he announces the code red and the shots are fired, he realizes that he is vulnerable. He's out in the open, correct?
If you can tell me what page it is, I'll get the exact terminology.
Page 10. Middle of page 10.
Okay. Yes, he's saying he's yelling for lockdown code red.
Okay. He's also telling you specifically, no. That's where I realize that I'm out in the open, in the middle. So then I go back, right at the corner of the 700, 800 building, I go back. So he explained to you that, correct? That came from his mouth, correct?
Yes.
So he makes the transcriptions. He announces on his radios before he takes a position of cover, is what he's telling you, correct?
Yes.
And the video confirmed that that's exactly what he did. Isn't that correct?
Well, again, the video shows him on the radio at the 700 building. I don't remember seeing the radio as he's running from the 1200 building to the 700 building.
The video doesn't show it, but you see him delayed getting to the 700 building, correct?
I don't remember much of a delay. I remember him leaving the 1200 building pretty quickly, getting to the 700 building.
Okay.
And I don't remember any radio.
Did you speak to Kelvin Greenleaf?
I personally did not. I know Detective, or I keep saying Detective Inspector or Special Agent Riddick did.
You're not saying that you have evidence that my client didn't get on his both school radio and police radio prior to taking cover at the 700 building.
I'm just telling you what I can recall from the video, and I don't recall him being on the radio when he retreated from the 1200 building to the 700 building. I remember at the 700 building, clearly you can tell he's on his radio.
Now,
I'm just trying to be accurate on what I can remember from the video.
I understand. But you also had the dispatch transcript to know that literally 1 second after Feist is shot, my client is on the radio announcing shots fired.
If you show me the transcript to refresh my memory, I'll certainly do that.
He also tells you that my concern was because I didn't know if the shots were coming out of the building. He brings that up to you on page 11. Another one of his concerns was that he thought maybe shots were coming out of the building.
Yes.
And my concern was because I didn't know if the shots were coming out. That was another one of his concerns that he expressed to you 2 days after the shooting, correct?
Well, that's part of the statement he made, but yes.
We'll keep going, okay?
Just want to be accurate.
Or were they coming somewhere out of the west side? That was another one of his concerns, correct?
Yes.
Because the west side is where Aaron Feist was shot, correct?
Again, we're going to go east and west. West is, the school is the most eastern building, the 1200 building. So west to me means anything west toward the 700 building, back to the 1300 building, to the football field.
Feist was shot on the opposite
side
exactly
of
where he was at, correct?
I know exactly where Aaron Feist
Over
was
73.
Hold on. Madam Court Board can only do one voice at a time.
Thank you, Judge.
One voice at a time. So the lawyer will ask a question, stop talking, the witness will answer the question, and then the witness will stop talking, and then the lawyer will ask another question. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
Feist was shot over 73 yards away from where my client was. Isn't that correct, sir?
When your client first got to the 1200 building, that is correct.
And then here he is again saying on page 11, because it sounded like it might have been even outside, correct?
Yes.
And he explained, that's why I went back to the corner at this point, correct?
Yes.
Your training, and again, we're talking about training before 2018, before this. Your training, if you believe that you're potentially going to be harmed with gunfire, you're not trained to just stand out in the open, correct?
You're also trained not to retreat from cover, yes.
I understand.
Okay, just trying to be accurate.
But you are trained, are you not, to take a position of cover when you think that you might get hit with bullets, yes or no?
Yes.
He tells you that I'm keeping cover on the east side of the building to keep them covered with my firearm directed towards the doors, possible with an anticipation if the shooter or whoever it was, which someone maybe was going to come out of this door. Another one of his concerns was there might be a shooter or shooters coming out of the doors of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
That was one of the possibilities, correct?
Yes.
He never narrows it down to say, I knew there was a shooter or shooters definitely in the 1200 building, correct? He never does that in his 16 pages of discussing this incident. Yes or no?
No, not specifically. He talks about the 1200 building, and then he says those other things we've just testified to.
Right. And then he tells you about waiting, and he sees an officer running right up in the parking lot, up to a tree right over, right? That turned out to be accurate, correct?
Yes.
There was an officer. That was Officer Burton, wasn't it?
That is correct.
Burton never, you learned, went into the 1200 building, correct?
That is correct.
Burton was with Coral Springs, correct?
That is correct.
Burton had additional information above and beyond what any BSO officer had, correct?
If he had his radio on, I would assume so, yes. I never interviewed Officer Burton personally.
He says right here, it was Coral Springs, Tim Burton, who was an SRO, correct?
Yes.
And Tim had a long gun on him, he tells you, correct?
That's correct.
And again, you're still doing this in a temporal sense, right? What happened next? What happened next? Chronological. Because you say on page 12, all right, what happens from there? Correct?
Yes.
And he tells you that he's telling him, he's referring to Burton, correct?
Yes.
I heard a couple of shots. Haven't heard anything since, and he's just taking over by, behind the tree. I'm taking cover here, and units are now starting. There was a 26-second gap from the time that he hears the first shots to the time that the second shots are fired, correct?
Again, that sounds accurate. I have to look at the timeline.
And you don't know when it is that my client hears the next round of gunfire, correct?
Not based on a statement, no.
In fact, the last 2 minutes of the 4 minutes and 15 seconds of the shooting occurred when the shooter was on the west side of the 1200 building, correct?
He comes up on the east side and he travels westbound.
Yes.
And then he abandons his weapon and goes down the west staircase.
Correct. So the last shots fired were from room 1240, the teacher's lounge. Yes or no?
Yes.
That's on the opposite side of the building from where my client is, correct?
Yes. Well, no, again, he's opposite side from the part of the building where your client first went. Your client went to the 700 building, which was like a third of the way down the building now. So your client at that 700 position is actually closer to the teacher's plant area than he was at the east doors.
You're still talking at least over 50 yards at least.
I'm just trying to be accurate. I'm just, again.
Yes or no, it would have been at least 50 yards, if not more, correct?
I would say that would be close to being accurate.
And the last 2 minutes of the shots fired by the shooter, Nicholas Cruz, came out of the teacher's lounge, room 1240. Yes or no, sir?
Can you say that one more time?
The last 2 minutes of shots fired by Nicholas Cruz came out of the 1240 teacher's lounge. Yes or no?
I'd have to look at the timeline. I don't think that's accurate. He fired 10 rounds out of that room, and I don't remember it being 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Isn't it a fact that he began shooting at 2:25:34 and he stopped firing at 2:27:35 out of the teacher's lounge? Yes or no, sir?
Okay, I'd have to look at the timeline for the exact times, but you were accurate about the last 10 rounds came out of the teacher's planning lounge. Yes.
And he's assuming a position of a sniper fire, is he not? Because he's shooting at kids and or cops out the window. Yes or no?
I believe that's accurate. The last 10 rounds.
And the active shooter policy states, does it not, that if you believe you're dealing with sniper fire, you are to isolate, contain, and wait for SWAT. Isn't that correct? Yes or no?
Again, I'd have to look at the policy. I know the active shooter policy goes, you have to go to the gunfire, and it doesn't say specifically if you think it's a sniper that I recall, but if you show it to me, I'll read it.
I will.
Yes, we will.
And if that's...
Witness needs to shut up right now.
Usually it's if he's barricaded, you call for SWAT.
Well,
but if he's actively killing people, no. I would say that's inaccurate.
You don't believe that he's barricaded in the teacher's lounge?
Barricaded and still shooting is a whole bit different ballgame from barricaded and not shooting. Barricaded with a guy in a gun, you call SWAT because he's no longer hurting or killing people. If he's in a room and he's acting as a sniper, you still have to go up there and get him and stop him.
If you know where he's at, first of all, correct?
Well, you got to find out where he's at. That's what we're supposed to do.
That's right. The first units, he tells you, are saying there's someone over by the football field, correct?
Yes.
He hadn't been able to review the dispatch transcript to know that there were officers like Kratz who said shots fired by the football field, correct?
Yes.
So that turned out to be completely accurate, correct?
Yes.
And again, he's telling you that he's making it very clear. In my mind, I was kind of, is he maybe running towards that? Maybe he's not even in the building. He might be somewhere way out over here. I mean, in my mind, I obviously didn't know, where the shooter was. And I started wondering if he had fled westbound at that point, because they're talking about people injured near this football field, which is quite a distance from the building. You remember when he told you that, correct?
Yes.
And the football field is quite a distance from the 1200 building, isn't it?
It's on the, again, we're going to go northwest corner of the campus, yes.
There's literally hundreds of yards between the 1200 building east side and the football field, yes or no?
Yes.
He does tell you that he assisted when someone came over and asked for keys, correct?
Yes.
And he didn't keep the keys from them. He immediately gave those keys to be of service, correct?
It doesn't say time frame. He said he gave the guy the keys who asked for them.
Okay. And you understood that to mean that he was being of service to somebody who was asking for the keys, correct?
Yes, he gave the keys to the 1200 building doors to whoever the SWAT personnel wanted.
And you determined that to be factually accurate, correct?
I didn't personally take the statements from those people, but yeah, I read the statements where that was accurate.
And he made it very clear to you, too, that he gave the keys because he wanted to make sure that they had access to the classrooms, correct?
Yes.
And that was to specifically help the people in the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
Mark's going through the entire 16 pages, proving that everything that his client said in that recorded interview was correct.
Do you know the name of these 5 kids who allegedly came out of the 1200 building?
Again, that was part of the secondary investigation, which I was not a part of. All the police response part of the investigation was done by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. So I don't know.
Keith Riddick, correct?
Well, he's just one of them. He was the main agent. I don't know their names. No, I'd have to go back and look at these reports.
There's no evidence that any of these kids came running towards my client and gave him any real-time intelligence, correct?
I'd have to look at his investigation because I did not interview any of those people. So I can't answer that. I don't know what they said when they were interviewed.
He tells you, does he not, that he ordered Assistant Principal Jeffrey Morford to go to the video room, did he not?
Yes.
And the purpose, he tells you, why he did that was to try to find out where the shooter or shooters were located, yes or no?
Yeah, well, that's logically, I believe, why he did it. I don't remember him saying it, but yeah, that's logical.
And that turned out to be true, correct?
Yes.
And you were able to confirm that when Jeffrey Morford and Greenleaf were reviewing the video, that was being relayed to my client by the school radio, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you also confirmed that then my client was announcing what he was being told by Jeffrey Morford, correct?
Again, I'd have to listen to the radio transmission, how Nicholas Cruz's name first came out, whether it was over Coral Springs, because by that time I think we had uniformed people got their way down to the administrative building and were actually in the room when the video was being played back, is the way I recall it. So I don't remember whose radio it came across when I heard it. I just heard Nicholas Cruz's name come across a radio.
So my question is, did you investigate to determine whether my client was on the scene announcing what he's hearing over his school radio that was coming from Jeffrey Morford? Do you have any first-hand knowledge of that?
I'd have to look at the radio transmissions. I don't recall him actually saying Nicholas Cruz over the radio.
Well, we're talking about over the school radio.
We don't have a transcript of that. It was not recorded.
So did you speak to the witnesses who were around my client to learn whether my client was conveying that information over the school radio that he was getting from Jeffrey Morford?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
No, that's a yes or no question. It's overruled. You can answer that question.
Again, the police response investigation was not conducted by me, so I did not interview any of those people. I'd have to look at Keith Riddick's investigation to see if he did and what they said.
It turned out, you learned, that the information that my client was getting from Jeffrey Morford was old. It wasn't accurate, correct?
The information that they were putting about him coming down from the third to the second floor was 20 minutes inaccurate, yes.
That wasn't my client's fault, correct?
No, I don't believe so, no. Because, again, I don't remember your client putting that out.
And at this point, there's no question that the BSO police radios were useless. Isn't that correct?
Yes, but can I go back to that last question? Because now I remember how it came out. It came out through Sergeant Rich Rossman, who was standing aside of a Coral Springs guy and a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas staff member who heard he's coming down from the third to the second floor. That's who put it out over the BSO radio.
Right. You know where they got that information from?
The control room.
And who was the control room speaking to?
Again, I don't know, because I didn't do those interviews.
Gotcha. You're not saying it wasn't Scot Peterson who was speaking to Jeffrey Morford on the school radio. You just don't know, correct?
No, because it's not recorded. And I didn't conduct those interviews because that was part of the investigation into the police response.
That Keith Riddick did?
That the Florida Department of Law Enforcement did, yes.
Yeah.
I love this magenta magic mirror we get to see Mark in.
He tells you that he was given a description by Jeffrey Morford, who was watching the video, and that description was of a subject who was wearing a male, wearing a burgundy shirt, black pants, and black hat, correct?
Yeah, what page are you on, sir?
I'm on page 16 of 36.
Okay.
You remember him telling you that, correct?
Yes.
And and you asked, and you got that description from a vice principal, and he tells you yes, right?
Yes.
And you say, watching the video, answer, correct.
Yes.
You confirm that to be accurate, correct?
Yes.
Whoa. Greeners. Greeners making everybody green. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
When my client tells you that he announced over his police radio, "Get the school locked down, gentlemen," you later confirm that by seeing on the dispatch that my client did in fact do that, correct?
Yes, I remember him. That part I do remember him saying over the police radio.
And you noticed that he asked for the lockdown or demanded the lockdown about 5 times over his police radio, correct?
Again, without having to review it all, I don't remember how many times. I know he asked for the roadways to be blocked. He asked for the parking lot, keep people out of the parking lot.
Yeah, because school was letting out, right?
Again, the terminology of why he was doing it, I don't know.
But you did know that this happened in the afternoon,
oh,
right
yeah,
before school was letting out,
exactly.
Correct?
Sure.
And you do know that parents, kids, would then be coming onto campus any moment, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
And it's consistent with training then to keep those people out of an area where they then may get hit with bullets. Isn't that correct?
In this case, in my opinion, it was the absolute wrong thing to say to the responding deputies, because it was an active shooting situation, still in progress.
It turned out to be, in retrospect.
Right.
But when my client's there, not knowing where the shooter or shooters are located, and he feels that parents and kids may be harmed, training tells you to keep them away. Yes or no?
No, that's inaccurate. He told the officers to block Holmberg Road. Some of those officers actually heard the shots being fired, and that direction was a complete contrast to what those officers should have done. Those officers hearing those shots should have rushed onto campus as well.
Did you know whether those officers thought the shots were coming from the 1200 building or somewhere else?
They had no idea.
They didn't, correct?
But they should not have been setting up a traffic post. They should have been coming on campus to find out where they were coming from. And that's what protocol and police work in general tells you to do. They were given the wrong direction.
He doesn't lock down the school. Parents and teachers come, and then Cruz shoots and kills them.
Objection, Judge.
I haven't even heard a question, Mr. Igosh, and quite candidly, I'm at the end of my patience with this type of examination. So if you have another question
I do.
that ends with a question mark,
yes,
you may ask your question.
You said that you checked the transmissions that my client made in real time, correct?
Yes, I looked at the transcriptions, yes.
So you were able to verify that at 2:28, my client is announcing to BSO, over his BSO radio, the last time we heard shots was between the 12 and 1300 building, correct?
I'd have to look at the timeline to see the exact time he said that, but I do remember that.
You also remember him in real time asking Deputy Perry if he knew where the shooters were located, correct?
Yes, I do recall that.
And then 18 minutes after he first announces that the last time we heard shots was between the 12 and 1300 building, he again repeats that. Last time we heard shots was between the 12 and 1300 building, correct?
I'd have to look at the timeline for the time frame. You're saying 18 minutes. I don't recall him saying it the second time. I remember him saying it the one time, yes.
Okay. You're not saying he didn't say it again. That's easy.
That's why we do
check.
these timelines. If you give it to me to refresh my memory, I'll refresh my memory. I don't remember the exact times on everything on that timeline.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate your
Just
support.
one might have a moment.
Sure.
Okay, there's going to be a lot of corrective rehabilitation of this witness, I think. A little ASMR there. That didn't sound as good as mine, I think.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
You're ready.
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead.
Detective Crusoe, were there any windows shot out of the 1200 building?
They were impacted. I wouldn't describe them as shot out, but they had been impacted by rounds on the second floor.
Did any of them?
And on the teacher's planning area.
And did any of them shatter?
They partially in the teacher's planning area. They didn't shatter. The fragments got out of the third floor teacher planning area and ended up on the roof of the 1300 building. But the window.
That's facing the football field, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did Scot Peterson ever use the word sniper with you?
No.
Did he ever tell you that he was receiving fire?
No.
Explain the distinction between an active shooter and a barricaded subject.
Again, an active shooter, again, is somebody who is actively shooting and or killing people. On an active shooter scenario, one of the goals in trying to stop an active shooter is to get him to barricade himself, where he's no longer doing harm to anyone, but he's contained in an area where he's not killing people, he's barricaded. You block all the entrances so he can't escape, and then you call in the SWAT boys with all their specialized equipment to get him out.
Now, you said one of the goals, and earlier you disagreed with the term kill the killer. Why?
The goal is to stop him from killing people. Excuse me. And that doesn't mean killing him. It means slowing him down. It means distracting him. It means anything so those kids can find safety.
Why don't you order a perimeter?
Because again, the goal is to try to stop him from actively killing people.
You're also trained not to retreat from cover, was something that you said. Can you please explain what you meant by that?
If you have cover, you don't run across an open area to try to determine what's going on. You have cover. You try to determine what's going on from a position of cover and then move towards where the threat is.
When he said may have been outside or really close, what building was he referencing?
1200 building.
And now he admitted to you that he threw the keys from his position outside. He never entered the 1200 building, correct?
No, he did not.
And when he told you that he gave his keys to SWAT, that was after the shots had stopped being fired, correct?
That is correct.
He didn't do any of those things that he told you, and he didn't tell you in his interview that he did those things while the shots were happening, did he?
No, he did not.
Now, the problem with the radio was, as you put it, how many people were trying to key up. Is it fair to say that the radio issues occurred after the shooting had stopped, once the shooter had left the building?
Yes, I would say that's accurate.
And the problem with the radios, explain where the radios fell on your priority list while you were on that scene.
They were lower on my priority list because we were trying to get an active intelligence from anybody who was on the scene when the shooting was occurring and where the suspect or where the victims could be located.
And that's because the person hearing gunfire is the source of active information, active intelligence, correct?
Yes, he's one of the best sources.
I'm sorry, say that again.
He's one of the best sources.
And the whole radio, who's giving information to who when someone's listening to active gunfire? Who's the source of real-time information? Who's supposed to be using the radio?
Well, the person on scene who's the closest to what's occurring is the person in command. It's not a question of rank. It's not a question of position. It's the person with the most pertinent information to lead the rest of the responding people to what's going on at the scene.
Aaron Feist, and according to defense counsel, was shot at 2:23:25 while his client was standing outside the 1200 building. Did you confirm that those shell casings showed that Aaron Feist was actually shot on the west side of that building?
Yes.
And at that time, Scot Peterson was standing on the east side of that 1200 building.
That's correct.
And according to his own attorney, for 4 minutes and 15 seconds, his client stood there while gunshots were going off.
Actually, he moved from the 1200 building to the 700 building position for that period of time.
And after retreating from where those gunshots are happening, he then remained in that position according to himself, the statement you took, and the surveillance that you reviewed, correct?
That is correct.
And during that time, the shooter was on the second and the third floor while Scot Peterson was standing outside the 1200 building, correct?
Actually, he was standing outside of the 700 building, but yes, he was outside 70-some feet away.
And so that was the 2 to 3 shots that killed Aaron Feist, the 6 rounds on the second floor, the 61 rounds on the third floor, so about 70 rounds, all while Scot Peterson stood outside of the 1200 building after retreating to the 700 building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And he told you that he heard 2 to 3 shots.
That's correct.
You said it was very clear to you that he meant that he heard only 2 to 3 shots. Why was that clear to you?
Because during the statement, he reemphasized that once he got to the position at the 700 building, he heard no longer any shots being fired, and it got quiet. And I've actually heard him make the same statement of 2 or 3 shots to other people.
Judge, objection, hearsay.
It's overruled. It's a statement from the defendant. Go ahead, Ms.
For the defendant, okay.
Just a moment, Judge. Just one final question. When else did you hear him say that he only heard 2 to 3 shots?
In interviews.
Objection, you can go sidebar.
Okay, so they're doing a quick sidebar. The question was, when else did you hear the defendant say he only heard 2 or 3 shots? And the response was in interviews. The objection came in. They're doing a sidebar really quickly. We almost got a jury shot during the objection or the sidebar. I think our jury shot is up to 7 now. 7 times today they've shown the front or back row, front and back row of jurors. So this cameraman, it might be our first cameraman who's back. Okay, so statement by the defendant is an exception to the hearsay rule. So they allowed that in. I think the judge was right to allow that in. Yeah, this is why Mark doesn't object. Everything is overruled. He has very few wins in the objection category. So is this the state of Florida seal as designed by a 3rd grader? There's the jury. Hello. Welcome. That's number 8. Got them all. Did anyone miss that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're cross. Go ahead.
The prosecutor just asked you about the best source of information on the scene. The best source were the kids who called in to 911. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it would have been one of the best sources for the Coral Springs response.
Because those kids precisely knew where the shooter was located, correct?
They knew where he had shot people, yes.
They also knew that kids and adults had been shot, correct?
Yes.
That information never was relayed during the shooting to any BSO officers, yes or no?
Objection, speculation.
That's overruled, sir, but I don't want you to guess. If you have personal knowledge, you can answer the question. Go ahead.
The only response that I remember was Coral Springs tried to transfer calls from those students to us and never got to us.
So it never happened, correct?
No. The transfer of the calls never got to BSO's dispatch.
And we talked about Burton, but my client and Burton weren't the only ones standing around. And by that I mean taking positions of cover. Best was there, Coral Springs Officer Best, correct?
Yes.
He didn't go into the 1200 building, correct?
Not that I can recall, no.
And there were other officers who also remained in a position of cover and didn't go into the 1200 building, correct?
Many of those arrived afterwards, yes, but that's correct.
And many of them heard shots as well and didn't go in, yes or no?
The only ones that I recall heard shots were the BSO ones that were positioned on Holmberg Road blocking the roadway.
People like Miller.
I don't remember Miller's name, but there was 7 of them, I believe.
And you, sir, you never went into the 1200 building, correct?
Not until after I arrested Nicholas Cruz.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Lunchtime.
If I could just have your name 1 second. State, do we have time to start your next witness?
State rests.
All right, this time to stay rest.
Boom. State's done. We're going to take a lunch, I think.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the state having rested their case, there's some matters that I need to handle with the lawyers, so I'm going to send you to lunch It's going to be a slightly longer lunch. I'm going to have you back at the normal time, which is 1:45, because there's a few things that I have to handle with the attorney. So with the same admonition as always, please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else.
So
If
we're
you leave
looking
notepads in your chairs. They will be waiting for you when you come back. I hope you have a nice lunch. I will see you at the jury room at 1:45 p.m. this afternoon. Thanks.
Let's hurry and get a quick shot of the jurors leaving. I'm going to cover that up here with my face. This is absurd. We're literally watching all the jurors exit the room. I hid the jury. I'm doing what I can, Red Pen. I'm trying. Let's see if we have a quick motion here to dismiss. Keith Riddick, I don't know.
Okay, we're outside the presence of the jury. Everyone can be seated.
Can I just run to the bathroom in 2 minutes?
Well, yeah, but I'm going to let Ms. Gomes is here. Yes, you can go to the restroom. I had sustained the state's objections. I was going to allow the defense to make a proffer, what additional questions they wanted to ask the witness. We're outside the presence of the jury. Mr. Ivarsh, any additional questions that you have? Go ahead.
Yes. One of the primary reasons why you interviewed my client at all was because your supervisor asked you to, correct?
Sergeant Jonathan Brown he's the one who made the arrangements for Mr. Peterson to come down. So, yeah.
And that was done because family members inquired about what my client was doing during the shooting, correct?
That was the one reason Jonathan Brown wanted him to be interviewed, but I was interviewing him for my purpose as well.
Okay. That's what I would have asked him, Judge.
No other questions?
Trying to think of the other.
If you look at the big display in the center of the screen, the one with the map.
I'm at a loss. I forget what else there was that had been sustained, Judge. So.
Okay. State, based on that, any questions that you would like to ask outside of the presence of the jury?
No, Judge.
Okay. State,
There's that big color photo.
All right, sir, you may step down. Thank you very much.
Big color photo of the 1200 building.
So
If
while
you zoom
he's
in.
doing that, the state having
It says-
rested their case, I'm inclined to just send you all to your lunch break now. As soon as we come back, I'll hear any motions on behalf of Mr. Peterson. I'm not prejudging anything, so then we'll take it from there based on those. Mr. Ivarsh, is that okay if we handle those motions after the lunch break? Yes, thank you. State, anything you need me to address before we take our lunch break? No. All right, so we're otherwise going to be in recess. I hope y'all have a good lunch. I'll see you at 1:45. 1:45.
So I wish we would zoom in on the west side of the 1200 building. Picture that shows where Aaron Feist was shot. He was on the west side, and this officer testified. The detective testified. Anyway, this officer testified that the south side was the west. So, okay. So we're done with court. The video froze, so I think they might be turning off the transmitter. Yep, everyone's frozen. So, all right, we have lunch until 1:45, which gives us an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes even. Maybe. I look terrible. Are you okay, Vicky? I have not shaved in ages. I loved going camping. I didn't shave for a while, so I look a little rough around the edges. I'm also not sunburned, but thoroughly cooked. Stick a fork in me, I'm done. I caught a lot of sun over the last week. The state rested just now. If the state rested, why are they still asking questions? They weren't. This was after the state rested. The judge allowed, because he sustained the objections. He said, "I'm going to allow this proffer, so I'm going to allow you to ask the witness more questions without the jury here, just to see what the answers would be." And Mark says, I can't remember what it was. Basically, one of them was, "Why did you interview my client? You know, you guys were looking for somebody to blame." Was what he was getting at. All right. I also those who say, Vicky, you said I don't look good. I feel great. I've torn a couple telemarketers to pieces in the past 48 hours. Tech support guys as well have felt my wrath. No, I've had some fun dealings with some of the companies that provide services for me, but it's good. Need a snacky? Yes, somebody get me a Lunchable or something. Let's see. Detective looked not so cocky now. He definitely looked different leaving the stand as he did arriving. North, south, east, west. I'm so glad the state did rest. Thank you, Mystic Mama, for that. By the way, you did a great job with the internet yesterday, Mystic Mama. Golden Girls handling it today, but good job on 2 wins yesterday. Do we know how many times the defense objections have been sustained in comparison? Kim, all I can say is much fewer. I would be surprised if we were over 20 for the duration of the case. It's been very few. So much so that every time it is sustained, it sounds surprising. Like, wow, that happened today. Maybe even single digits or none on different days. Let's see. What's the feeling on guilt, not guilty? I haven't watched this. Ed, we've got, I think we're about 80%. We're feeling that there was not guilty, or 75 to 25, somewhere around that range. I've been eating trail mix the entire time. My wife got trail mix yesterday as part of the Ticket Tuesday that she does with our kids, and she printed out these circus tickets, like admit one to the circus. It was actually just an event in our front room, which is always a circus. But they watched something on Cirque du Soleil. They had all sorts of circus themed treats and activities like that. My wife's just amazing that way. But one of the things she bought was trail mix, which I promptly ate all the Muddy Buddy pieces out of. And my daughter ate all the mini Reese's Reese's peanut butter cups. They're tiny ones. They're the size of M&Ms. They're not actual Reese's, but they're close. Your kids are going to be such amazing adults. That's what we hope, Gailey May. We've got our fingers crossed. Got our fingers crossed on that one. I love all the cool homeschool stuff we can do. I love it as well. My wife is so good at it. I really married up, and my kids benefit by that. My dad calls trail mix floor sweepings. Ivan, yes, a lot of people think that basically when the factory is done packaging everything, they sweep it up and then sell it as another product. And you might not be wrong. How many times has the jury shown today? I think we're on 8. 8 if you count them leaving. It was the back of their heads, but we got to see them leave the courtroom. We've seen them all. Every single juror was shown today, front and back row. Jan, I can't help but agree here. It does seem like there's a political prosecution going on. And I realize I wish Scot Peterson had done something different than what he did. But hindsight being 2020 and knowing what we know now, and then realizing what he was working with, and just the perfect storm that built up, his location and everything else, and how the radios weren't working, and where the 911 calls went, and everything that was going on, I just can't see a conviction. I wish he had done something else. I think, yes, had he done something else, he could have stopped them. But I don't think what he did was a crime. I don't think what he did was neglect. I think it was just based on the information he had, the situation he was in, he made a decision and followed it. And I think it was a good one. I don't think he knew where the gunshots were coming from. We're going to hear from the chief of police. If we do, it's going to be a defense witness, and that's going to be one I will be riveted to. Was there a kid injured at the football field? Super unknown. I think there was an injured child who ran out to the football field, and that's the one in question. I don't think there was a shooting at the football field. I think that happened in the 1200 building. Somebody ran away to it or something like that. Because remember, we got the kid who was shot. They were trying to help him over the fence, and they couldn't get him over the fence. He couldn't make it over the fence. KT wants Muddy Buddies now. They're delicious. If there's any left over, I'm going to go eat them. I doubt there are. The Parrot Court says, "Oh crap, my parrot is sitting right up against the TV and yelling at Scott to shut up. It's lunchtime, Parrot Court. I need to shut up so you guys can go get some food. Please call me when she gets a minute. I will do that. Tell your bird to be nice. The parrot's good. The parrot's good. A lot of love there. It's just he doesn't have a filter. That's all. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up here and go to lunch. We have an hour and 15 minutes, which means we'll be back in 1 hour at 1:30. I'm gonna open up the chat room there. First person in chat gets the opportunity to own the internet right now. Golden Girl did it. Did a great job. I mean, once it's fiber internet, it's pretty easy. It's an easy job. So that's good. Yeah, and I love the parrot right back. Parrot cord. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's time for RAT Muddy Buddies. I have not had breakfast yet. That's why I'm a little hangry. I've been a little bit snippy. If some of you are the recipient of that, I apologize. I love you all. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go get some food, probably have a sugar coma during the second half of the day, but we'll be back there. Okay, so tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love, smile at someone to make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again at 1:30. In 1 hour, we'll open this. Give us about 5 minutes. We'll have the chat open for the next one, a little placeholder for us. I don't know what that's called. It's upcoming, or it's the next live stream. It's the placeholder. Adios, amigos. Thank you very much, Kitty Kitty Bang Bang. Appreciate all you guys. Thanks for your comments. Our mods as well. Fantastic mods. Best mods on the internet are right here. Anyone who's here, you can see that. They're fantastic. Thank you so much for what you do, and it is a lot. I appreciate it. Also, this is the best community to watch true crime, and that is because of you. Thank you for your generous donations as well. Greeners coming in with 20 gifted memberships today. Made a whole ton of you green. Thank you so much. That makes all this possible. All right, we will be back after lunch. P-Fog, I see you slipping in there. I see you there. Welcome. Weather Watch, I'll have to talk to you about the podcast this weekend, see what we can do. Maybe Matthew, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, see you guys. Have a good lunch.